Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Brand Innovators livecast on consumer engagement. My name is Emily Agate, and I am the Midwest Program Director here at Brand Innovators, and I'll be serving as today's MC for our livecast. During today's program, we're going to be hearing from some incredible senior marketers from brands including Hilton, Land O'Lakes, Whirlpool, Simple Tire, and many more. Please be sure to ask questions throughout our speakers' fireside chats and keynote presentations. We always want to hear from you, our community of brand marketers. We also encourage you all to use our chat function to connect with other attendees throughout the livecast. Our Brand Innovators team is coming up on 1 year of producing virtual content, and we'd love to share a quick recap of the incredible events that we've been producing since we launched our series in March of last year.
Welcome to the official 2021 Kickoff Brand Innovators event. I'm sorry to negate all of that calming energy. We have an amazing program to kick off this year.
Alicia, it's so good to see you.
Meenakshi, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm really excited to chat with Julie.
It's my first event with Brand Innovators this year.
We have 3 days, over 30 main stage speakers, 13 different private roundtable discussions, everything from data-driven advertising to purpose-driven marketing, future of retail, entertainment and streaming, everything that you, the marketer, needs to know to have a successful 2021.
The brand purpose obviously is critical as brand stewards, as communicators, as strategic marketers. We need to understand what brand we're trying to build. As we entered COVID, we knew like this has the potential to be a catalyst and a galvanizing force for our entire operation.
People's psychology about the pandemic obviously changed week by week and month by month, where we had to really focus on safety and sanitation, contactless delivery, contactless carryout early on.
The entire pandemic, we've been working on just making sure that our content is speaking to the times, is sensitive to what people is going through, but is also continuing to evolve.
I'm sure that everyone here has seen babies and families and partners passing behind the Zoom or the Teams calls. And I think the ability to want to keep human and to allow for the integration of personal and professional lives is something that helps a lot and put people at ease.
We are shopping brands that are consistent with our values. We are looking for brands that have a point of view in terms of society and what is happening currently and current events, that are also close and working with our communities, and importantly, of course, that they are sustainable.
I think that's so important for brands right now to really make sure that they're not just sticking to whatever media plan or social plan they might have had before, they think they're supposed to do, or waiting for things to get back to normal. There's not a normal, there's not a thing to get back to. We're really in a place where we can only go forward and really progress.
Every single touch that we have with a consumer is an experience and is a representation of the core of who we are as a brand. And so all of those need to weave together. It's not a new concept. It has been around for years, but now consumers have raised the bar of the expectation of every single experience. The number of experiences in our brand ecosystem has exploded astronomically.
Think about your customers and try to see if you can map their unmet needs that kind of point you in the right direction for the kinds of things that you should be experimenting with. Obviously, testing and iterating kind of new things in a way that makes sense and that give you the confidence to really launch new things at scale.
On my mind, it's just B2C. Like we are on the same side, like their B is my B. What is more important, the structure, the processes, or the culture? I've seen places that have no structure, no process, but it works because the people are a certain type of people and it fits well with what they're trying to accomplish.
What is that story that any of us are telling, and how do we make sure that it's actually satisfying a need? Think about search, think about social advocacy, think about all of these other channels. Like, you need to be relevant and you need to be needed.
Well, the worst thing you can be in our business, as you know better than I, is irrelevant. We certainly are out of that, and now we're starting to see embracement. People have a feeling towards Gillette that's positive. And when you are able to combine love and respect, I think you're able to secure business for a long time.
We focus our PR only around March for Women's History Month and November for Women's Entrepreneurship Month. The closer you keep whatever area of purpose you explore and you dedicate yourself to what your brand stands for, the easier it is.
Well, I don't think there's a better way to kick off a live cast program than with that video recap of our 2021 kickoff program. So with that, I am so excited to welcome our first speakers of the day. Please welcome Amanda Bailey, the Senior Director of Hilton Honor Marketing at Hilton. And her session will be moderated by Terry Lavin, the RVP of Client Partnerships at GSTV. Hi, Amanda and Terry. So glad to have you guys here to kick off our consumer engagement program.
Hello.
Loving the matching backgrounds too. Those look great.
Making sure it's all set up, following our instructions.
Well, I'll hand
Thanks
it
so
over
very
to you
much.
guys and come back in towards the end.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And welcome everybody on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. I'm Terry Lavin. I run the East Coast for Client Partnerships for GSTV. Just by way of introduction, GSTV is a national video network running full video program on 25,000 stations across the nation, where we reach 1 in 3 adults as they habitually fuel up weekly and bi-weekly. I'm honored, truly honored to have Amanda Bailey here, our Senior Director, Hilton Honors Program with Hilton. And Amanda, welcome.
Thank you so much, Terry. I'm so excited to be here. This is an exciting topic and a very relevant discussion for us around consumer engagement and thinking about loyalty and relationships. And I'm excited to be here today. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I should like to begin by asking, what was your brief journey from being a finance major at Maryland to marketing at Hilton? For the last 7 years.
Yes, very good question. Yes, I started my career in wealth management, working in finance, and actually is a really good foundation for marketing, kind of bringing that knowledge forward. But I quickly realized that I didn't want to spend my time, balancing portfolios, managing other people's money, and I became attracted to marketing, had the opportunity to build the marketing department within the wealth management company, went on to a marketing consulting firm where kind of learned the trade of marketing, joined a startup in the fintech space to really kind of take that marketing to an industry that I loved. And then at some point, thanks to a great mentor of mine, he's like, you really got to come check out Hilton. I'm like, I don't know. I never thought about working in hospitality, and kind of took that leap, made that jump, and found myself at Hilton, and here I am nearly 8 years later. It's been an amazing journey. There's so much within the hospitality space. And I think at the core, not only is Hilton as a company, the values, the culture, just such an amazing place, but truly, what we believe about the customer and how critical they are to our business, to the relationships we have. And that's really kind of kept me here and kept me excited about the role that I'm doing.
Well, I was going to ask the question, assuming there's no 7-year itch, why have you stayed at Hilton? It's often voted one of the best places to work. It's a 100-year-old brand, but I think you've articulated quite succinctly why you're there. You lead the marketing and strategy, creative execution, focus on driving adoption and usage of the Hilton Honors app. Could you just elaborate more on that job function?
Yeah, so I look after our loyalty marketing program, and we partner with many groups across the company to bring the loyalty experience to our customers. Specifically, in my role, I kind of have 3 distinct functions. One around customer strategy and CRM. So really the group that understands and defines kind of our key customers that we are looking to acquire and engage with during the relationship with Hilton. The second part of my team is focused on the acquisition and activation marketing. And so whether that is acquiring or enrolling a new member into Hilton Honors, our loyalty program, or getting them to actually take out a credit card with us to deepen the relationship with Hilton through the relationship we have on the co-brand with American Express. And then the third area of my team focuses deeply on growth marketing, engagement marketing, and really thinking about how do you take that new customer, that active customer, and deepen that relationship, getting to know them on a more personal level and delivering them content, experiences, value that meets their needs based on the segment that they're in and the journey that they're on. So to do that, kind of how we sit within the organization is we guide a lot of that go-to-market strategy and the general marketing approach and plan, and then work with all of our business partners on the loyalty program management side, as well as within media, own channels, social, and all of the ways that our program and our brands come to life.
That's helpful. You describe yourself on LinkedIn as a customer champion. Could you elaborate on that title?
Yes, I am customer obsessed. I really do. I have a huge passion for understanding the customer, and it really gets me excited every day. I recently read an article, actually just the other day. I think one of the biggest takeaways I took from it is these big changes that have happened post-pandemic, where companies are focused, where marketing departments are focused. And what I love, the silver lining in all of this, is that so many companies, including Hilton, had this great opportunity to really hone in on focus on the customer. Not only what they look like, with their demographics and their age, but what they care about, what they value. And so this blend of taking a company's value, their purpose, their vision to, what do customers need and want from brands and companies and people in their life today, and kind of marry them together. So I'm a customer champion because I'm inspired by them. I think marketing should be led by them. And I think then business results fall out. So that's really kind of where my passion point lies, and why this kind of work and these discussions are really exciting.
Yeah, it's certainly infectious. But let me take you back a year ago, just on the dawn of COVID, before everyone was forced to pivot in a major way, as far as their strategy, as far as their thought process, as far as execution. People were not sure of next week, let alone the future. But before that, where was Hilton at that time? Where was your strategy headed at that time before things had to change?
We were flying high is the answer. It's the simple answer to that question. We just come off of our 100th year anniversary as a company, which was a really amazing milestone and something to be a part of. And we had just reached over 100 million members that joined our Hilton Honors loyalty program. And we'd really been focused on, paying attention to the industry. There's a lot of loyalty programs out there. We know our customers, our members are part of multiple loyalty programs. Some of our most elite customers, over half of them are part of other programs. And we recognize that and we understand that. So we had been spending a lot of time in 2019 really thinking about, what is our point of differentiation? What is it that's really going to make somebody choose Hilton and our portfolio of brands and our program over the others? And we conducted a bunch of research, kind of learned a lot about what was at the core of everything. And we set out on a mission to go beyond the transactional relationship that we had with our customers and really forge that lifelong loyalty and preference to Hilton through a more emotive connection. So we were kind of at the cusp of, rolling out some great positioning, really focused on how we can amp up our appreciation and recognition efforts. And then the pandemic happened. And what felt like, a lot of momentum almost halted in the business. Just, of course, consumers couldn't travel. The core of our product that we sold every day, booking hotels, elevating our hotels, was non-existent. It wasn't an option for us. That's not what people wanted to hear about. But what it did provide was this awesome opportunity for a brand like Hilton Honors, a loyalty program, the relationship driver of the company, to step forward and really put those members at the heart and say, what is it that they need? They needed to feel safe. They needed to feel like they had the flexibility. They needed to feel like they had the value that they were expecting from us. So we were able to kind of focus on the members, put them first, and double down on what they needed during this time. So, to go back to your question, we were ready to ramp. It was going to be a big year. And I'm not going to say that it wasn't a big year, because I think we experienced a lot as a company, and we went through a very traumatic time, but also a time where we spent a lot of time listening to our members and our customers. And I think that's really set us up for some great success coming into 2021.
You mentioned time, and that's interesting, because with all that uncertainty, the more positive cousin of uncertainty is time. And it sounded like you were given a bit of a relief to really concentrate as hotels were virtually vacant. To really focus on that customer.
Yes. And I would say, and we had to do that, of course, with less resources, less people at times. We had to be highly attentive to what was happening in the market, paying attention to what else was going on in customers' lives. And again, we just kept coming back to what were the most critical things for our customers during that time. And that was really about again, that safety and security first and foremost. And you saw Hilton introduce programs like our Clean Stay effort, and how we really doubled down on making sure people felt safe, that those that had to travel were, able to and felt comfortable doing so at our hotels. And then the second piece really being around, flexibility. And that's really what we focus on the first part, in that really kind of critical time when we could do very little. But then as things started to progress, we had the time. We've got that, we introduced all these programs, we've got people feeling comfortable, we're taking care of them. But then we kind of had this awesome space that said, okay, now we need to think differently about how to engage them. Now we need to think about what is on their minds. How can we bring Hilton into their lives in different ways? And so we had the time to really understand, to test, to learn more about our customers, what was making them interested. So that was everything from, publicizing our DoubleTree cookie recipe and having it blow up the internet, to, finding new ways to feature our member stories and hear about what they've been missing and the memories that they're making. And I think that for me and for our team and for many folks across the company was just such a refreshing chance to try some things that we just didn't have the time to really dive into in the course of business in years past.
Is that that's obviously the differentiator, because when you're looking at rewards points, they become a commodity. It's something, it's like a trading card. I'm a gold member of Hilton, but if you ask me how many points, I'd have to look it up. Most of us have multiple. So the differentiator has really been, if I'm hearing you correctly, the driver of the Hilton honors and how they're going to exceed the competition.
Yeah, I'd say two things. One, agreed. I think it's loyalty programs, whether that's in the hospitality space, in the credit card space, they are a dime a dozen in many ways, and it's a points game, and that's really going back to my point earlier. What we recognize very overtly in 2019. It's just more points, more promotions, more this, more that, and everybody has that. So the shift or the focus for us has really been around how do we put the customers, understanding not only our customer at large, but truly the customers by segment, by their different behaviors, by their different value systems. And we really seek to understand them on that more personal level so that we can deliver a program, functionally that's relevant and valuable to them, but emotionally that's meaningful to them, so that we're there and we're showing up in the moments that matter. And that takes, time, it takes testing, it takes listening, it takes a lot of those pieces. And really that's where we're focused as we move forward and thinking more about customer engagement more broadly.
Yeah, I love the term moments that matter. As COVID hit, we personally were on the front line as an essential service. Our 25,000 gas stations were seeing obviously a hit in the beginning, but by the summer it was pre-COVID levels. People felt more comfortable in their travel in the car.
Yeah.
The summer became a summer of driving. The spring outlook is very, very strong. You hear a lot about Americans, 2/3 of Americans are saying that they're travel starved. And when you hear terms like revenge spending and revenge travel, are you as bullish on spring, summer this year as everybody else seems to be?
Yes, absolutely. I think even anecdotally, data aside, I think everyone I speak to in my network is talking about, what they can't wait to do. And we're constantly, like I said, listening to our customers. And the number one thing we're hearing about is, I want to get back to travel. I want to go see my friends and family. I want to have live experiences again. And what that all really boils down to is, people are craving connection to the things that they love, and they've missed that. And so our goal as Hilton is to really be kind of that connector, that enabler of connection. And you're seeing that hopefully in our, when we talk about to new memories, it's about how we can help you get there, and how our program Hilton Honors can really make sure, again, you feel like you are safe to get there. You have the value that you need, the flexibility that you need. And then, we're ready to welcome you back. And our team members and our hotels are so excited to welcome guests back. We're seeing lifts in traffic to our website. We're seeing more people get into the planning mindset, moving beyond that dreaming stage and really start thinking about, all right, I'm ready to book that trip that I've been saving all my points for. And we're seeing that uptick. So very bullish and excited for what's to come.
You mentioned dream. Can you elaborate more on the phrase, come dream with us?
So we are really focused on, when we think about the customer journey. I think a lot of us in the industry talk about customer journeys. I will say, most of our work around customer journey is very focused on, how do we get a person to book? That's kind of the journey that we've always doubled down on. What's the dreaming, the planning, the booking, the stay experience. Now what we've done is really spend a lot of time thinking more broadly about that journey and less about a booking journey, but more about a relationship journey. So when we say things like, come and be inspired to create new memories with us, come, look at all of the great places you can go, how you can travel at our 18 brands and all of our hotels around the world. We're really focused on kind of bringing people in and exposing them to them, reminding them why connection, why travel is so meaningful in their lives, and kind of drawing up those memories. And that's really been kind of a big way that we've been bringing folks in from a content perspective, just tapping into that emotion and that mindset of people missing their family, missing adventures at the beach, missing all of these great experiences. And so being inspired to travel is kind of step one, and making sure they feel associated to the Hilton family. And then beyond that, it's about kind of moving them through the journey with us, through the relationship with us, that we realize for some is not necessarily immediately to booking. It may be to an engagement in a different way, whether that's, hey, maybe I can get a credit card today so I can start earning points to take me to that future stay. Or, you know what, Hilton's got some great partners that I can interact with today. And whether that's through Amazon or others, finding this additional value that we can bring into people's lives. And that's the journey that we're trying to encourage. So it kind of takes us all the way through their relationship with us and finding new ways to interact with them. And it's about that invitation into our ecosystem.
So let's talk a little bit more about that invitation. That doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from a lot of research. You've been through an evolution with a rebrand. With the Hilton Honors. And so you've seen this consumer evolve over time. But how are your marketing programs speaking specifically to this evolution and demonstrating its value?
Sure. So I will maybe take even a few more steps back. And as I've worked here at Hilton and on Hilton Honors for a long time, I would say, if you kind of take us way back, we were really designed to be a program and a brand that appealed to frequent travelers, the frequent business travelers, the road warriors. And that's how the program was designed. That's ultimately how we marketed it. And that's really where we focused. We then, about 5 years ago, kind of decided, we need to expand. We need to be a club for all. We need to be a place that all travelers feel welcome, from the 1 to 2 time stayers all the way up to those that stay 60 plus times a year. And so we really kind of broaden our message, our tonality, our approach to bringing people in the door. And then kind of fast forward to where we are today as a brand and as a company, we've recognized that every customer is different, not only as individuals, but every time they travel is for a different reason. And sometimes that's for leisure, sometimes that's for business, sometimes it's somewhere in between. And so part of what we do and part of what our repositioning effort really led us to is recognizing that what's important is that we recognize the person that you are in different moments and deliver against that. So our program and our brand and our marketing is designed to recognize that and deliver what you need in that moment for that occasion or that particular instance of your interaction with us.
Yeah. There's really 2 different types of travelers. I mean, there are those who are ready to travel right now, yes, and those who are not. So how are you keeping them, how are you staying top of mind? I mean, with those? Yeah,
so absolutely. So yes, we have, and kind of very simply, you have the non-starters, right? Those that are just, I'm not traveling until I'm vaccinated, and I don't even really want to talk about it until I know that I can get there. And you've got the folks that are, on the fence. They're thinking, hey, maybe I'll do it, but I need to probably have a little bit of an extra nudge, whether that's, hey, I need a really good discount or rate, or I just need a really good inspiration point. And we want to be there when they're looking for that. And then, of course, there's those that are already on the move, and we want to make sure they're thinking of Hilton. But what we've done to stay top of mind, regardless of where you are in that journey, is again, found new ways to engage. And so one of the best examples that I like to point to that we introduced last year was our artist formerly known as Feel Good Friday communications. And I know a lot of brands did that in the space, but it was truly a communication vehicle that also extended into social to bring content to them that didn't require them to go to a booking. It was about, ways to remind them of the uniqueness of Hilton, the memories of Hilton that they could have. And we could do that right in their home, right in their inbox, right in their social feed. And that was just a really awesome way to say, hey, you may not be traveling right now, but look at this recipe, look at this story. Have you checked out this partner? Try this new thing. And what we found is we were able to engage with those customers that were missing us, just like we were missing them. And they found new ways that we can engage with them, new ways to interact with them. And that's really been something we've continued and will continue as we move forward, because we now have a little bit more permission to kind of be part of people's lives in a broader way than just when they're in our hotels.
When you're part of their lives and you have a very distinct message, it's fair to say that content is queen, actually.
Yes.
How do you make that relevant, that content?
Yes, so I love that you picked up the content is queen, especially in honor of Women's History Month here. But it certainly is, and I think content is a big word. Everyone thinks about content differently, and I think the point I want to make here is really just just having good content isn't good enough. I mean, the content needs to be relevant. It needs to educate you, inspire you, entertain you, but not just broadly, not just generically. I can find music content anywhere. I can find travel content anywhere, but what is it about your content that's unique, and more importantly, connecting those customers back to your brand? And that's where I kind of talked a little bit before about test and learn, because you really have to figure out what is the relevant content that is going to whether drive an immediate action or inspire an action for the future. And that's, content is queen, because you've got to figure out what it is. It's not just good content. It's content that really drives and invites and inspires the next action. And that's really what we're focused on when we think a lot about consumer engagement and how to drive that with content. But it is a big part of what we do and will continue to do.
It's very clear. It's very clear. You started the conversation with one of the bullet points that you were in charge of, and that is CRM.
Yeah.
I'm curious, could you just articulate a little bit more of a worst case, best case usage scenario of CRM?
Worst case, best case usage scenario. So I think the very simple answer, let's just talk about how do we use CRM, is really making sure that you put the right message in front of the right customer at the right time. And that's what everybody wants. You want to know exactly what that message is, exactly that it's going to get to the right customer. The reality is that, you can do a lot of that with great, strong CRM programs that are based on past behavior. And I think one of the things that, the teams and modernized CRM functions are thinking about is how do you predict future behavior? And so you ask the best and the worst. The best is when you get it right, when you're right in the moment, you've got the right message, you know your customer, and they take that action that you wanted them to take. The worst is when you miss the mark. If you're promising personalization and you're promising that you're anticipating your guest needs and knowing what they want, and you don't quite hit it, it can have a downward effect. So, you try to minimize that as much as you can by basing it on past behavior. But in the world where, past behavior may not be indicative of future behavior, especially in our industry when business travelers may not be traveling for business anymore, what is going to be that driver, that indicator that will get them to take that next action with us? And that's, I think, the challenge, especially here for us at Hilton, of thinking about what are those new indicators of behaviors and how can we power our CRM engine to understand those and identify those and drive that action in the same way. So I think CRM is just, I believe very deeply in the power of it. And I think that many companies, ours included, are just scratching the surface of doing smart things based on past behavior, but how do you get even smarter about what they're doing now and what they may do in the future?
It's a great answer. I mean, we're talking about our consumers in blocks. Loyalty and customer service is such a passion of yours. Can I get even more granular and ask about a consumer? Has there been a customer that has inspired you?
A customer that has inspired me. Well, I think I've probably got a few. So I am inspired by those folks that really kind of move through life with intent. I love to describe like kind of the people that inspire me. It's like people that know what they want, people that want to kind of, make the most of their days, that are really going after, and they're looking for brands to really support them in that journey, empower them in that journey. And I'm so inspired by that person. And I can see them walking down the street confidently, very boldly, knowing what they want to do. And I just think about, how can Hilton Honors, how can Hilton really, support that person, empower that person, recognize that person, because that person knows what they're after. We're just here to support them along the way. And so I think about that person. I envision that person walking down the street, and that's who I think about. And that's why I think, the things we've done with Hilton Honors, whether that's, again, going back to understanding their needs, not getting in the way, not trying to showboat anything, but really just say, we're here to support you. We're here to lift you up. And that's the role that we try to play. And that's what, for all the members we've talked to, that's what, our most loyal customers want most. They want to be, recognized for who they are. They want to be empowered to have experiences on their terms. And they want to make sure you're going to give them the value that matters. And that's what we focus on. And that's the person I see. And I hope that we can deliver against.
That's great. I want to touch on the loyalty piece of it. You have a tremendous relationship with American Express. Mm-hmm. And there's quite a few cards there. There's the Surpass, Business, Aspire, yep, the regular American Express, Hilton Honors. Discuss that partnership a little bit more and that value.
Yeah, it is. I've had the pleasure of working on the co-brand credit card program for the last almost 4 years. And one of the biggest things that I learned during that time is, we all knew how to, sell hotels and travel. But then how do you bring a credit card into that ecosystem and make that kind of a meaningful product and experience that you have? And the credit card, I say, is kind of this hero that comes in good times and most importantly in 2020, even in the tough ones. And what we found is that has become just such a great way to drive deeper engagement with our customers, because every time they shop, every time they swipe, they're thinking of their relationship with Hilton Honors. And if you ask them, they continue to swipe and spend with our credit cards because they're saving up their points for that future dream trip. They want to get the status benefits that the card delivers. And that is just such a meaningful partnership. And our friends at Amex, they have great insight and great products that can help power that relationship. And so the combination of Amex and Hilton together, and that kind of the ability to earn and accelerate the best of what Hilton has to offer is through the credit card. And that has really been something that has, kept us standing very strongly during the pandemic. And those are the ones that are coming back and booking those first big redemption stays at their dream properties because of all the points that they've earned on dining and other, value areas that they've needed during the pandemic. So it's a very flexible, vehicle and product for us that is all about deepening the relationship and then hopefully propelling them into their next experience with Hilton.
The loyalty that you mentioned, it seems like earning it is a never-ending process. How do you adapt to that fluidity of earning loyalty?
Yes. Again, it just really goes back to paying attention, earning their loyalty. We really believe that it's about, again, recognizing, what matters to you and being there, for you along the way. So, that may be delivering you, like I said, the value. We pay attention, what kind of offers do our members want? What kind of stays are they doing right now? Are we incentivizing, are we rewarding them for the right types of things that matter to them? And that's meaningful for people. People want value out of the loyalty programs. You can give them all the great experiences in the world, but at the end of the day, there's a foundational part that is about the value, and we make sure it's there every time. And then, kind of pivoting into the experience, on property, we know as an honors member, you're going to walk into the door and our team members are ready to greet you. And in a world of contactless arrival, where we're doing much more through the Hilton Honors app, and you're able to, open the app, check, book your room, check in, choose your room on your phone, and then ultimately get your room key on your phone. We're able to deliver that recognition and that experience to our members digitally. So again, they can choose to go straight to their room, but we want to make sure they still feel recognized and, making the experience seamless, making sure no matter what, if it's digital or physical, they feel recognized and appreciated is a focus. And I think, where we continue to double down with respect to earning loyalty by providing value and, delivering again and again on a seamless experience.
It really is a personal touch. And, there's no surprise that customer is always the focus. And if whether you're Amazon, as you mentioned earlier, or any other organization, they're talking about the customer experience being critical. When you view the customer experience, there's like an excitement in your voice. Like, where does that come from? I know you're a very pleasant individual, but this is the hospitality business is very difficult. Where does this motivation and passion come from?
So I'm a person that likes things to be seamless and easy. And there's a lot of things that go on around us in our lives. And I'm inspired by the idea of if I can be, and if we can help be a company and a brand that supports someone having an easier, better, more seamless experience, like I'm all in. And I think that's really where the passion for it comes from, is like, make it seamless, make it easy so that I can go on and do what I need to do. And sometimes I need to go on and go to a meeting. So, make it easy for me to get the benefits that I need and, what I need from you in the morning when I wake up. Or, sometimes I want to be the hero because I've earned all these points. I've been on the road. I want to bring my family in and recognize that. So I'm inspired by kind of, making sure that you understand people for where they are in any given moment and providing an experience that supports them and allows them to go and do just what they need to do in that moment. So that's kind of what charges me up. Because again, I think of that person that they know what they want, they know where they're going. They just need you to kind of deliver. And that gets me excited. And I think when we can do that in the customer experience, not only on our hotel, but throughout their entire relationship with us, that's what, gets us going.
Are there any media executions in the hospitality industry that make you cringe? Maybe not so severe as cringe.
I wouldn't put down all of our friends in the hospitality industry. Maybe a different way to say it is, I think one of the things that the industry at large, travel, hospitality, we can all challenge ourselves to do is find our unique differentiators. I think, everybody clearly has pent up demand for travel. Everybody's dreaming about the aspirational properties and destinations. And, it's hard even for us sometimes to find that, like, how are you going to cut through? How are you going to break through? How will they know it's Hilton and not someone else? How will they know it's Delta and not somebody else? And I think for all of us, it's a challenge to say, what is it that's going to be unique to Hilton, unique to us, unique to your company that you can really bring forth to the customer? So not that anything makes me cringe, but I always want to push our collective industry to find those differentiating points, because I think that's going to give each of us a place. There's lots of travelers, millions and millions and millions in the world, and lots of people committed to the hospitality industry. Let's just all find a way to make ourselves stand out.
Well, I totally agree. When we gather, and we will gather a year from now, what
Absolutely.
We discuss, what is the headline going to be?
What is the headline going to be? The headline for us is definitely going to be, Hilton Honors has had my back, and I'm here with them, and I stand with them, and I'm ready to travel with them again. I mean, I think that's the big piece for us. We want to be remembered as the company that had their back in good times and in bad, and we're going to be there. We've been there for them through the pandemic, and then we found ways to deliver even better experiences and value and appreciation to them along the way. So there they are standing with us on the other end. That's what we hope for.
Thanks. We have a few questions in the queue that I'm going to get to, but let me end with, what is your favorite Hilton property?
Oh, good question. There's so many great ones, but I will share. One of my very favorites is it's the Waldorf Astoria in Shanghai on the Bund. And one of the reasons I love that property is truly how they treated me when I was there. I felt like the most important person walking in those doors, and the experience. I'm not certainly the most important person walking in those doors, but every morning they greeted me. They knew, made sure I was all good. And that was the experience for the customers. The hotel was beautiful. The views were beautiful, but most importantly, that experience, from the time I walked in, I felt like I was gliding through the whole experience to my room and had a lovely stay. And it's just top notch. So a great property.
That's going to go on my list.
Yes, for sure.
Here's some questions we have in the queue. I am a Hilton Honors Lifetime Diamond member. Are there any shortcuts to being a Diamond member, by the way? That's my question.
Are there any shortcuts to being a Diamond?
Like any hacks to become a Diamond member?
Well, I will say you can get our Hilton Honors American Express Aspire card and enjoy Diamond status as a card member for as long as you're an active card member. So that's probably the fastest way if you literally wanted to do that today. And then I think on top of that, right now, because of the pandemic, and a lot of us have done this, we reduced our status requirements, our earning requirements by 50% this year to recognize, that folks are just simply not going to be able to travel at the frequency that they once had, so that we dropped that down to make it more attainable. So you could get the credit card tomorrow, or you could, take half the stays needed normally for Diamond and start working when you're ready to travel again.
Well, that's great. I do not want to eat into a Diamond Club member's question, but Jonathan continues on and says he loves the program. He's been enjoying the content in their weekly Friday emails during the time of reduced travel. The question is, do you think this will lead to Hilton being top of mind for people when they start to travel again? I think it's a very obvious yes.
Yes.
And also, what Hilton hotel are you looking forward to traveling next?
Okay. So yes, I
a variation on that question.
Yeah, so you're right. The short answer is I believe that our content is definitely going to keep Hilton top of mind, and why we're continuing to focus on that, and why we're bringing new things forward to our customers. So absolutely, Jonathan, hoping that that's inspiring you and keeping Hilton top of mind for you. As far as the hotel I'm most looking forward to, I would love to get out to the Waldorf in Monarch Beach. It's a newly Waldorf property. I've heard amazing things. I'd love to get out to California, and that just seems like my first big destination coming out of this pandemic.
Well, it's funny. If you ask me my favorite Hilton hotel, it was really an experience. It was the Hilton LAX.
Oh, wow.
College at Loyola Marymount, and we had an event there, and they treated us so, because when you're in college, your hotel experiences are really just motels on a beach. There wasn't anything special, but a bunch of us rugby players were treated so nice by the Hilton staff. I was embarrassed to even be there. They were so kind. Another question: did you have a professional mentor early on in your career, and how did that relationship impact your journey?
Yes, I am grateful that I've actually had many along the way. And I think that is one of the things that I point to as part of my growth in my career. Those mentors helped me learn more about myself and often recognize things about me that I didn't fully understand and appreciate until I got their guidance. I referenced earlier when I joined Hilton. I mean, that person, that mentor, and I would have never considered joining Hilton. But he at the time was like, give it a chance. I think you're going to find your place, come on in, give it a go. And he was right. And that was a big, part of, every step along the way, checking in with those mentors, getting some feedback, asking some questions in their experience, but also, put yourself in their shoes. And that's really helped me along the way. So yes.
Wonderful. Yeah. Another question is, how do you approach emerging media channels, and how do they factor into your overall strategy?
Yes, I'll speak to this a little bit, but also do a plug for one of my team members and colleagues that will be coming into the Brand Innovator Circle soon. Rebecca Panico, who leads our media team, can talk a lot about this. But I think, for us, we're definitely a company that is, tried and true in the channels. But like I said before, we're always testing. So as new channels come on board, actually was in a meeting earlier today, we have a community of honors members on Clubhouse. Do we go on Clubhouse? What do we do about it? And I think one of our approaches is definitely thinking about, evaluating the channel, understanding how consumers interact with it, what tie do we have in being there? And that's the team that focuses on social and media and all of these emergent channels. That is the approach that they take, is kind of, wait and see a bit. And then when we enter into it, when we explore it, it is much more of a test and learn approach. And then when we find something that works, we go at scale. But I know Rebecca has been thinking a lot about this and the changing of media channels, the focus on digital. I mean, we know that over 70%, if not more, of media spend is going to be in the digital space as we move forward in 2021 and beyond. And I think there's a lot to learn and understand as you kind of charter those new territories.
Yeah, we've noticed that as well, and it's a fun conversation to have. This is a really good question: is, as leaders, you're always developing your abilities. What skills would you like your marketing team to develop this year?
So, great question. As we've just come off of kind of our year-end process, the one thing, and I think this is a perfect example, is get external perspective. is so important. Especially those of us that have worked at companies, for a long period of time or been in similar roles. I'm always, challenging them to, find an interest and a passion that you can follow and get external perspective. So the absorbing of information and then taking that information that they're reading and learning about and applying it to their everyday job. And that's not easy, to A, carve out the time, and B, then figure out the implications as it relates to your role. So that's kind of one big area. The second big area is definitely, around using customer data, using performance data to really inform decisions, not just in strategy, but in day-to-day prioritization. When you're looking at a set of tactics and things you can do, how do you look at that tied to business results? What's going to have the biggest impact? What are the implications if you do X and not Y? And so using that kind of data-driven decision-making within a marketing context, within a loyalty context is really important, and one that, we're always kind of, fostering and wanting to build and get smarter about on our team.
Well, thank you. And Amanda, you've been terrific today, and you really get some great insight into Hilton Honors. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your candor. And I think you've all inspired us as well. And I'm glad
you, Carrie. I appreciate it. And I can't wait till you do your next trip, and I'll give you some more tips on the side of other great places to check out.
Thank you both so much. I loved hearing in the beginning Terry's comment that you went to University of Maryland. I grew up in Maryland, so I've been a Terps fan my whole life. So so happy to have you both here. And thanks, Terry, for being such a great moderator. Perfect session to kick off our consumer engagement live cast today. So thank you both.
Thank you, Emily.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was a great kickoff session, and we're really looking forward to moving along with our next few speakers. So feel free to, stick around and submit questions as they come up throughout the future sessions. But we're so excited to introduce our next speaker, Tim Brunel, the Director of Content and Production at Land O'Lakes. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. And we have Kathy Schaffner here, the Chief Investment Officer at Empower, who will be serving as the moderator. So really happy to have you both here and hand it over to you for our next session.
Great. Thank you.
Of course.
Well, hello, everyone. Tim and I are excited to be here today to be a part of this consumer engagement conversation. And I first want to start by thanking Brand Innovators for having us here and giving us this forum to talk about this really important and relevant topic, obviously, in today's marketing world. So Tim is here representing Brandside in the consumer engagement conversation. And Tim has about 25 plus years experience leading large teams through every facet of branding, marketing, production at advertising agencies from New York to Boston to Minneapolis. He's just got a wealth of experience. So we're excited to have him here today. And the last few years, he has served as Director of Content and Production at Land O'Lakes. And as Emily said, I'm Kathy Schaffner, Chief Investment Officer at Empower. And we are an audience-first, data-driven media agency, also specializing in creative analytics, word-of-mouth marketing. And we're kind of representing the other half of the consumer engagement conversation because our focus is on simplifying this complex world of engaging with consumers. So speaking of complex, when I've had some conversations with Tim in the past, I was very interested to learn that Land O'Lakes is a very diverse and complex infrastructure, more than most people realize. And that makes consumer engagement somewhat challenging. So I'm going to kick it over to Tim to say hello and share a few words about his background, but really dive right into this unique infrastructure of Land O'Lakes and how it relates to consumer engagement. So Tim, take it away.
Thanks, Kathy. So hi, everybody, and thanks for the opportunity to talk today. So Land O'Lakes, if you didn't know, you probably know us for our butter, but we're a very diverse organization. This is our 100th year, and we are a cooperative. Most folks don't realize that. We are owned by farmers. So our first audience are the farmers who own and invest in Land O'Lakes. Those are both dairy farmers and row crop farmers. And then our second audience, who also have a bit of an ownership stake in this, are ag retailers. So if you go out into the rural communities, you will find ag retailers. And so they're a big part of the equation as well. And then our third audience, of course, are just consumers. So people who buy dairy foods, but also farmers and others who buy seeds and other things like that. So our organization has to be very buttoned up in terms of like the tools and systems and processes to produce content and solutions that accommodate all of these diverse audiences. So I suspect that a lot of you are in the same boat. And I'm guessing, Kathy, that you probably see that every day at Empower as well, right?
We do. And we're constantly helping brands figure out how to target many different audiences and develop content for those audiences, much like, as you and I have been talking about what happens at Land Lakes. So let's just dive right in. Tim, I'm just really curious to share with the folks listening today, outside of the typical organizational challenges that, you've kind of described with the different audiences of being a cooperative, how would you define the biggest challenge you see marketers facing today? And drawing on all of your experience, what advice would you have to help them solve it?
Yeah, so I like books and I like reading about marketing. And the topic that's had the biggest impact on me as a marketer, as an advertiser, as a writer is behavioral economics. So the work of folks like Daniel Kahneman and Rory Sutherland. And Rory, who wrote this great book here. If you haven't read Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, highly recommend it. He talks about behavioral change. So let's put it this way. Let's assume that you've made a great piece of content, a video, a poster, a website, et cetera, and your audience experiences that content. What behavior changes as a result? Right? So what behavior changes as a result of great content? If you can answer that question, that's to me the foundation that you need to create great content, to create behavior changing content. So having that conversation around what is the behavior that we're trying to affect, to me is the most important question that marketers can be asking themselves.
Yeah, totally agree. And, when you and I were talking about this the other day, I was thinking about how do we help brands, figure out what that behavioral effect is they're trying to accomplish. And, we have some proprietary tools that help us really map out that consumer journey to identify these key opportunities to engage with the consumers better so the content's more impactful. I'm just curious, how do you at Land O'Lakes, gather those insights? What's the process you use to go about, understanding the type of content you need to create?
Yeah. So our marketing organization underneath that has sort of 6 key functions, but to this particular question, audience insights strategy, that group is dominant in terms of trying to help us understand, quantitative, qualitative data, anecdotal data. What is the audience thinking about? What matters? And then we have a rather robust marketing operations, kind of the tech stack. And those folks can look into web traffic, social traffic, and merge those things to help us get a sense of, well, what is working? What can we measure? So having both kind of like traditional consumer insights and then the data and analytics side of it working together, that's the mix that we employ. And of course, those also include our external agency partners as well. So depending on the campaign, depending on the project, external partners are going to bring in their expertise, and we're going to utilize the expertise that we have internally to create a valid solution.
Yeah. So you said something really interesting there when you talked about data. And I know, data is at the core of everything that we do for brands we work with. And we know that the importance of leveraging that data to be able to understand where to place that content is so key. And that's important in that consumer mapping journey. So you use the data, you get the insights, you create the content. What's your approach to amplification of that content?
Kind of the similar thing, which is to say, we know which channels work best. And so, hey, this idea seems to be taking off, right? Why is it taking off, right? Being curious about, we had the original strategy that made us think it would take off, and then it is taking off. Is our rationale consistent? Or is there some new indication in the market that's causing a piece of content to flourish, et cetera, et cetera? So you're kind of constantly asking why is this working? And then looking at your channels and saying, hey, if we put extra money in that channel or that channel, would it help? Because there are ways of amplifying things where essentially like you're going to spend money, but nobody's going to see it, or not the right people are going to see it. So we're kind of in this process of always asking why. We have in-house like mini marketers. We've brought a lot of marketing in-house, a lot of media buying in-house, but we work with our external partners as well. So to the amplification question, it's about asking, how do we know that if we try to amplify it will work, and then which channels are the best ones to look at?
So do you kind of feel like you're always in this perpetual test and learn, add more, read what's happening? Yeah.
Yeah, let's think about this. Like prior to the internet, this is like, thanks internet, like prior to the internet, and I'm old enough to remember like making a campaign, shipping all the stuff, and like, hey, we get to go on vacation for a couple of weeks because it's going to hit media and we aren't going to get results back for months, right? Versus today, you ship something, pretty much moments later if it's working or not. And so that change, that shift causes all of us to like have to behave and act differently, right? And so kind of asking why continually, feedback loops are hugely important.
Okay. So when you're looking at the amplification process, like how are you guys staying on top of the trends and the current social listening aspect of what you're hearing, particularly with that diverse audience that you have from the farmers to the end consumer?
Right.
How do you do that process?
So these questions would be best directed at some of my colleagues who do exactly these sorts of things day in and day out. But the short answer is hire young, curious people, hire digital natives, hire people who are in Instagram all the time, or in TikTok, or whatever the Clubhouse, whatever the platform is, people who are passionate about those platforms. I'm always excited when, we have folks on the team who are like, hey, we want to get this brand engaged, or this part of our this part of our organization engaged in a new platform. Let's try stuff. So to me, it's about having enthusiasm, but also recognizing like there are established platforms like Twitter or Instagram, and we kind of know what works. We kind of have a good sense of the techniques, the templates, the approaches that will work. So let's start there, but also be willing to experiment and to try.
Yeah, we do that approach a lot, and we've also developed this thing we call Culture Tap, which is really interesting because it allows us to do what you're talking about in a little bit more of a real-time moment aspect. Because to your point, uncovering those trending content topics and themes, and being able to deliver that content more real-time versus maybe some after the moment has passed, really, really gives you some good insights into that type of content you should do future development on. So yeah, that's really interesting. Again, it's just back to that perpetual test and learn that you talked about.
Well, here's the important thing. I think that leadership of organizations has to kind of want that, has to embrace, and our CMO is like all about that. Like, what's the pulse? What's happening right now? And there's certain trends and certain pulses that, we're mostly B2B. A lot of the purchase cycles for things that we do outside of dairy retail are longer, acquiring software from us to manage your field. That's not an instant purchase. You're going to think about that for a while. So, but there are, trends and pulses that our comms team are looking at, and we're constantly trying to be more nimble, to be more iterative in the moment, and to recognize that, sometimes that makes sense for a brand like ours. Like when the butter emoji came out, we knew that the butter emoji had been approved. We just didn't know when Android and Apple were going to launch it, like which updates they were going to launch it with. So kind of being ready for things like that is important. And then having, I think, again, leadership that's saying like, I want us to be reacting in the moment when it makes sense. So yeah, that's kind of the way we think about it.
Cool. So I know I've had an opportunity to view some of the great content that you've created, and I think it would be really fun to share a relevant piece of content with the audience, and just kind of have you tell the backstory about why it was created, why it was successful. And I know it's always a little dicey to share, streaming content on one of these Zooms, but I think if we can pull it off, I think it would be a good story for our audience.
So the backstory is talent acquisition. We recruit heavily from a number of different colleges in both like the coding, technology side of things, as well as, field reps and marketers, et cetera, et cetera. And when our talent acquisition people, when we talk to them about, what isn't working, we get the typical problem, which is like most college kids look at Land O'Lakes and they go, a butter company, right? like they don't know, right? And so, hey, could we have a piece of content that would help break that stereotype? And if COVID hadn't occurred, we would have approached this in a very different way. We probably would have spent real dollars on it. But because of COVID, because everybody's remote, because everybody's got these things, the approach was like, okay, can we identify 30 or 40 employees across the country to each record a bit of this entire narrative, this script that we wrote together. So this piece features a bunch of employees kind of going through a script and trying to help people empathize and kind of be surprised by what we do at Land O'Lakes. And hey, maybe consider working for us. So when I hit this thing, optimize, you got to hit the optimize for video clip. That's what I've been told. Okay. And we're going to hit share and it should be go. Well, I'm going to go over here and click go.
We are not that butter company.
We're not that butter company.
We're not that butter company.
We're not stuck in the past.
Or stuck in a stereotype.
Or stuck. Period.
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 Did you know we are actually a cooperative?
We report to farmers.
Not Wall Street.
Our jobs help American farmers do theirs.
We are inventing technologies.
Creating and marketing consumer products.
Writing our own code.
Building e-commerce platforms.
Innovating in supply chain.
Persuading lawmakers.
Building coalitions.
We have more than 8,000 employees
in all 50 states and across 50 countries.
We're helping farmers sustainably feed the world.
Sustainably feed the world.
And supporting the communities in which they do it.
We're feeding human progress. Maybe you should join us.
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 All right, there you go.
That was great.
Maybe you should join us.
If that doesn't make you want to go work for Land O'Lakes, I don't know what does. So, and
I hope
anyone who leaves this call thinking that you're just a butter company, just pay attention. That's awesome.
And we're hiring. So just look on the LinkedIn. We are hiring in a bunch of areas in marketing right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, and before you showed the clip, that there's been a lot of things that have changed and challenges with the pandemic and, when COVID hit and what's happened in the past year. I'm curious, what have you been able to solve for? But more importantly, what solutions do you think that, things that you've changed and done that you think are here to stay? And as you come out of this, won't go away?
Right. I think the first, let's call it a prediction, is that the whole remote work from home as a valid option, sold, done. I know organizations have realized, hey, this can work. In the right context and for the right things. This kind of an approach, the mess that is my desk, it's okay. I think that case is closed. And so I think the smarter organizations are going to allow employees to work more flexibly. You bring your best self the best way you can. So I think that's there. And if that's true, then for our organization, I think that video empowered employees, and I'll give you an example in a second, I think are here to stay. So we have hundreds of salespeople all over the country. And because of COVID, they couldn't meet at the farm gate. They couldn't spin up a sales presentation in a cornfield or in the local Holiday Inn around animal nutrition or agronomy, et cetera, or even like a food service. What do you do when there's domain expertise here that needs to get out there? Well, then employees go, I got one of these things, or I've got a GoPro. And so over the course of the last year, we've been training employees to be videographers. So that's teaching them how to think about content, how to present content. Because if I have a sales pitch or a presentation about a specific technology, it's very different if I'm doing it in person and I've got my PowerPoints behind me than if I have to record it with my phone in my garage. And so helping people think through strategy of content delivery to the black eye of a camera is one thing. Helping them think through what's the B-roll and hey, if you want to show a piece of equipment, well, you could film that and do the voiceover later, right, at your desk, thinking about those things. And then also thinking about editing and understanding all of that. So we've got, I'll give them a lot of credit. We've got people who, when they were hired, 10, 15 years ago, it didn't say videographer in their job description, but they're picking it up, and in some cases it's like, hey, teenager, can you help me figure this out? So we've got a number of folks, again, in food service, in agronomy, animal nutrition, who have picked up the tools. And in a lot of cases, they're telling us, it's like, I don't want to give these tools up. As an example, if you're a sales technician and you have the opportunity to meet with, let's say, 50 people in a ballroom to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, that's great. But what if I could give you 2,000 customers and you do it from home through a Facebook Live event? Most of the salespeople are going to go, I'll take the latter. And so we're discovering that, video-enabled employees are just going to be huge, especially in B2B selling contexts moving forward.
Well, I think certainly in the industry, there's going to be a lot of things that, don't go back to the way they were because we've all been charting our new normal, right?
Yep.
I mean, even in, the media industry, and we think about just how consumer behaviors have changed and, how it is no longer about the device that you're consuming content on. It just becomes a very device agnostic world now. And I don't think that's ever going to change. And it sounds like, you guys are preparing for that as well.
Yeah.
And then also it's going to become, source agnostic, right? So as you put content out there, it's not going to matter to the end consumer or to the provider of the content, how that person is receiving it, right? Agreed. So yeah, lots for sure that are going to go back to the new normal. So talk a little bit about specifically to your business. What predictions do you have in your space? I mean, as a cooperative, like what things are going to change for you as you look into the future?
Well, in sort of two words, rural vitality.
Okay.
When you think about, and this has an application to sustainability and stewardship, as well as just the economic security of the United States. If our farmers and their communities aren't secure, then what happens to the rest of us? Where does the food come from? Mm-hmm. So one of the big initiatives that we're involved with is called the American Connection Project. You can Google that. It's a partnership with hundreds of other organizations, Microsoft, the Mayo Clinic, et cetera, to look at issues including rural broadband. So most of us, if we're in a city, have great access to broadband. But if you live out in the boondocks, you might not. And that lack of access is affecting healthcare, it's affecting education, which then have a detrimental impacts on farmers. And again, we're owned by farmers, so we care about those things. So I see kind of the realization that we're all connected and that some of us could benefit from greater resources. So American Connection Project is an area where we as an organization are putting a lot of time and effort.
Okay. How important is it, and I know we've talked a lot about it, so I think we can see some of the relevant importance, but how important is it that consumers understand that you are more than just that butter company and that you are cooperative and the work that you do with farmers, which when we spoke was just so fascinating to me. I mean, as an end consumer, I had no idea. So How important is that going forward for your company?
Well, again, a great question for our CEO, who's amazing, and our CMO. But I think that if they were here, they would say it's hugely important. I mean, it's one of those. I'll put it to you this way: I've been with Land O'Lakes for 2 years, and about a year ago, under other duties to be assigned, where it's like, hey, you also get to do this other task. A colleague and I got handed the reins, the responsibility, the keys for our corporate archives. And so I've had the chance to kind of dig into the boxes and look at the materials and look at how we marketed this company, 100 years ago. And it's interesting that the theme is still there, that like, hey, we're a cooperative. That's a good thing. We're owned by farmers. It just seems to be an evergreen message, So, and I think that that's one that, especially as audiences start to ask questions about where does my food come from, and they start asking about, well, is it sustainable? We want to help answer those questions, and we're uniquely positioned from an integration standpoint to be able to answer and verify those questions.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about, again, back to the amplification or the placing of the content. So how has your marketing mix really evolved from pre-COVID, post-COVID, and what kind of trends are you seeing, by channel, or trends that you're seeing as you're creating the content?
Yeah, there's some other folks in my organization who I wish could answer this question because they would.
We'll have to do a follow-up on this. Yeah.
They would love to, and they would have much more nuanced answers. I would just say that, from a media mix standpoint, again, we're recognizing that we're all impacted by this, and so as an example, thinking about how does content work on these things. From a location relationship, location relevancy standpoint, like, oh, you're near a retail outlet. Maybe that's a good moment for us to convey a message. To also just thinking about how do we ensure that content works on devices and in environments where you don't have broadband, right? So it goes back to that question we were talking about earlier. It's like, how will we know? How will we know it works? And what's the behavior we're trying to affect? Those questions are fueling kind of our responses to media mix and media strategy.
How important is it as an organization, your connection to charitable causes or the message of the philanthropy message? I'm thinking specifically to a piece of content I know I shared with you that I absolutely love that was created about the women farmers. How important is that in your organization's role of getting your message out and your name out?
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, our foundation does amazing work, whether it's, looking at storm damage. We had the big storms in Iowa and that affect farmers in rural communities, or floods that affect, animal owners. And we think about, the Purina, we own Purina Animal Nutrition. So we affect horses and chickens and zoo animals all over the country. How can we help those folks in the cases of natural disaster, or the fires in California? We do a lot around responding to those circumstances, but then also thinking, how can we, from an innovation standpoint, how can we help those who own chicken flocks, those who own horses, be in a position to respond more effectively in a natural disaster? So, we're looking at things like, how can we help animal owners have fencing situations that if it detects a fire, the fence opens so the horses can get out. Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, stuff like that. Or we have a chicken coop that will float, right? Because when the water comes, chickens aren't smart enough to fly away, sadly.
Yeah.
So what if the coop just floats, right? But we're also, heavily involved in ag technology. So working with colleges and university that are what are the next generation of kids coming up who are inventing all of these new technologies. So we're heavily invested in trying to work with those teams at colleges and universities. And then, yeah, you talked about the She.io spot, which came out.
Yes, one of my favorites.
On International Women's Day. Yeah, we're big proponents of all of those kinds of things. So I think that, you know, you look at what our foundation does, and we're, again, heavily invested in rural communities, especially.
Yeah. Can you talk just a little bit more about, because I found it really interesting, the Purina pet area of the business and what you do. I mean, you talked a little bit about the innovation piece, but I think most of our audience, those listening, might not really know that part of your business. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
So again, going back to consumer engagement and brands. So Land O'Lakes, historically, the dairy business, fairly obvious. We have Winfield United, which is ag. Let's call it ag. It's the easiest way to describe it. So ag technology, ag retail, crop inputs, managing crops throughout a cycle. And then there's Purina Animal Nutrition. So it's everything except for cats and dogs. That's owned by Nestle. So we backyard chicken flocks. My wife informed me that we're going to have one, which is going to be awesome. I think it's going to be over there somewhere. Hey, check out, we have a new backyard chicken flock feed brand called Hen Up Organics. I encourage you to check that out. I'm really proud of the work that the team put in behind that. So we're, chicken flocks, horses. We have a facility down in St. Louis, Missouri, that there are 50, 60 PhDs who are like the smartest people on the planet around how, veterinary sciences and animal nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. So we're deeply involved in that space. And then one of our newest business units is called Truterra. And Truterra is, for lack of a better description, infrastructure for sustainability. So software and practices that help farmers serve as stewards of the land for all of us, through things like carbon capture. So we've just launched a carbon credits program, sold some carbon credits to Microsoft. So yeah, we're involved in a huge range of industries and businesses rooted in the land.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I think if nothing else, you certainly have demonstrated today that you are more than a butter company. So I think that's pretty exciting. Yeah. So, I think it's about time we have to open up to questions here from the audience. Okay, so talk a little bit more about the efforts that you do around the part of the company that everyone knows that you represent, the butter piece of it. Like we talked a little bit about the ag piece and the Purina pet. Talk a little bit more about the objectives around the actual butter business.
Well, a positive effect from COVID is that people were home baking more. So we've sold a lot of butter. We're also, so to the consumer side of the business, butter, cheese, those are big, important parts of our business, been around for 100 years. But we're also in food service. So when you look at dairy and you think about school cafeterias, hospitals, and especially when you think about COVID, how do we help those sort of, you might even call them warehouse kitchens, right? They have to shift from, we're going to make food that's fresh to eat, to we have to make food that when you take it home and microwave it in your college dorm, it still tastes good. And there's a lot of science and a lot of thinking from a culinary practices standpoint that go into like what ingredients, what proportions, et cetera. So we have culinary scientists, we have chefs, and a lot of them were working from home and using their smartphones and filming content that we could give to, district managers of school cafeterias to help them pivot and adjust. But we're also on the retail side of it. We've done a lot of work to showcase the lives and the importance of farms run by women. There's some really great content that we did in partnership with Tastemade that's been out there on that topic.
Great. Okay, here's another question that just came in. How do you recommend heritage brands gracefully enter new spaces and new products? Often consumers are thinking, not another X type company.
Yeah.
What advice would you give?
Yeah, so I'll go back to dairy.
Okay.
We known for, butter and known for cheese, but we acquired the Cozy Shack rice pudding brand a number of years ago, and that's been growing like gangbusters. People are loving the rice pudding. A lot of this, the answer is partnerships with retail. So we do, obviously we're working with Walmart. And so, they might say to us, hey, we think you could help us in a certain segment or with a certain audience. And obviously we're doing that kind of research as well to try to figure out, well, what next? We're looking at plant-based stuff. Of course we are. Why wouldn't we be, And so a lot of it is about inquisitive minds and looking at innovation, either from a market standpoint or a retailer partnership standpoint, to identify like, where are the opportunities? Legacy means we know how to do it, means we have the infrastructure, means we know how to keep things safe, quality high, we know how to get it to retail. So there are advantages of legacy brands in terms of the infrastructure. To me, the consumers are always going to be open if it looks good and if it tastes great and it meets a promise. So I don't, it's more like we have to give ourselves permission to go out and try.
Okay, great. Another question just came in. Do you have a specific demographic base? Anything surprising about your consumers, or is it just a wide range of terms of gender, age, religion, et cetera? I mean, it's particularly interesting when you talk about how diverse you are.
Yeah, we kind of talk to everybody, but in different channels. We talk to people, anyone who wants to eat food.
Yeah.
So we talk to them, right? In some way, shape, or form. And we have a lot of B2B. I would say that our web of audiences and profiles is very diverse, and there's a fair amount of overlap in a lot of them. So it's very topic or situation dependent.
Okay, great. Well, let's see on some other questions here. This one over here. So how do you approach emerging media channels? So we talked a little bit just a moment ago about demographics, but how do you approach emerging media channels and how do they factor into your overall strategy?
Yeah. We're a little conservative. Like we're not going to be the first to jump into a platform. Not that we wouldn't want to. I think that we just like to make sure that we're spending. It goes back to, we're owned by farmers. We want to make sure that we're spending their dollars effectively. We do personally, I think about the folks across all of our marketing teams. There are people engaging on Clubhouse, and we've got a lot of people on doing their own personal work on TikTok. So we definitely have a curious mindset. But from an official sort of standpoint, we're going to be a little bit more rigorous about, let's just take TikTok as an example. We're absolutely curious and interested. Have we done anything there yet? No. Will we? Sure. At some point, one of our partners or someone will go like, hey, here's a good opportunity for that. But I think we want to make sure that our organization understands like, hey, here's this new media channel that you've probably heard about. Here's why it's distinct and why it would matter to us and how we might leverage it. So we're cautious in the sense that we want to make sure things are organized and that people understand kind of purpose of that new channel as it relates to us before we just go and jump into it.
Yeah. Do you find that as an organization, the different areas kind of ebb and flow or rise with the tides together? Or are some areas of your organization a little bit more conservative or less conservative, or a little bit more risk adverse than others?
No, we're kind of the same across everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So I think that's on the questions that we have. So I have a question for you. Like, what is the, one thing that you would like to leave with our listeners today? I mean, besides the fact that you're not just a butter company, which I think everyone will think of every single time they go to their refrigerator and get, a stick of butter out. But what else would you like folks to know about Land O'Lakes and the work that you guys are doing?
Help us boost rural vitality, tell your friends. I think that I've learned so much about how our country works, the part that isn't, an urban area. And I'm fascinated by it. It's really interesting. And so sharing these stories. Hey, I didn't know. Did you know? I learned something interesting today. I think that's, to me, would be awesome. And on a personal level, think of curiosity as a muscle that you can strengthen. So that's my number one piece of advice for students or anyone really, is think about how are you being curious and how are you improving your curiosity skills and muscles.
Great. Hi, Emily.
Hi, great session, you guys. To follow up on that, Tim, I'm curious, what do you do outside of work to keep that curiosity muscle growing and continue learning throughout to, feed into your career, but also, it looks like you're reaching for something.
He reads books and plays drums.
Drumsticks.
Yeah.
Gotta have drumsticks.
Well, we'll have to have you come back for a future of audio day, and maybe.
Oh, I'm not that good.
No, I think that's great. I think it's always good to, flex the creative muscle outside of work, because it really comes into what you produce each day and bring to the table. So love that. And thank you so much for sharing so many of the cool work that Land O'Lakes is doing and sharing that commercial. I loved that so much. And thank you, Kathy, for being such a great moderator.
Thanks, Kathy.
You. Thanks for having us. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks,
Have
Emily.
a good rest of your afternoon. Hope to have you guys back soon.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, we're ready to move right into our next session. So we're thrilled to have John Hall here. Hey, John, how's it going?
Hey, Emily, how you doing?
Good to see you. John's the brand and product marketing director at Whirlpool Corporation. And his moderator, we're going to be joined by Nate Sullivan, the director of product marketing at Botify.
Hey, Emily, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Glad to have you both here. I'll hand it off to you, and we can kick off your live cast session.
All right. Hey there, everybody. As you heard, my name is Nate Sullivan. I am the director of product marketing at Botify, an organic search performance platform that works with a lot of big brands who want to be found by consumers. And thanks for joining us today as we continue to talk about engaging those consumers. Of course, thanks to Brand Innovators for the opportunity to be here and for the chance to introduce the other person on your screen. Again, John Hall of Whirlpool. John is currently the head of market strategy at Whirlpool and someone with some fascinating insight into modern consumer engagement. He's a Michigan native, a West Point grad, a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom with a pretty amazing and very surprising brand marketing connection we'll get into, and a leader of teams behind some iconic consumer brands like Velveeta, Kraft Mac and Cheese, Bullseye Barbecue Sauce, and Planters Peanut Butter, as well as somebody who took on a pretty incredible opportunity at Whirlpool to reposition their brand, along with some well-known high-value sub-brands like Genair that you know and love. He's a father, a teacher, and an all-around really interesting guy I'm very excited to hear from. So John, can't wait to get into it, but first, just want to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nate. Thanks for having me. I skipped lunch today, and after hearing you talk about Kraft Mac and Cheese, I might have to go back and get a little bit of Kraft Mac and Cheese.
You've changed a lot of lives. So just a quick FYI for everybody, if you're just joining us, feel free to throw any questions you have into the Q&A widget here. I'll try to keep an eye on that, and we'll leave a little time to go through them at the end. And apologies if John and I just get lost in the subject here because it's good stuff. So John, when we get to talk the other day in anticipation of this conversation, I got to learn just a little bit about your background in the military and how it ultimately launched sort of the second career in marketing. For the benefit of everyone listening who was not a part of that conversation, can you just start us off with the story behind that and how it kind of uniquely prepared you for some really different challenges in brand marketing and consumer engagement?
Yeah, for sure, Nate. It's really kind of my story on how I actually got into marketing. I didn't know I was doing marketing in the moment until I eventually got to Kraft Foods and they were telling me I was doing marketing. So it's about 2006 or so. I was an Army captain on my second year-long deployment in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was in the town of Adwar, which was Saddam Hussein's hometown. It's actually where they found him. But I was in the middle of a transition where I was what we called one of the first non-lethal operators. So I had a non-lethal team, and the goal of the team was to improve the perception of coalition forces to the Iraqi population. A high percentage, well north of 95% of the population loved what we were doing there at that time. A lot of rebuilding of schools, a lot of fixing hospitals, providing security for the governance to take over, kind of cleaning the streets, and yet there were still quite a few attacks that were happening. The other thing that was happening is we were training the Army force, the Iraqi Army force, the Iraqi police force, and they were fully stood up operational units that could go out and help the civilian population. But interestingly, nobody would call the number. Nobody would call 911. So part of the goal that I had was to improve the perception by, showing kind of what was happening to the local population, but also the call to action was, if you need help, to call this number. There's a support team that.
Did we lose John? Not sure if it's just me or if John's connection.
Direction, but am I still coming through okay, Nate?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Sorry about that. We were at patrols, going out in the streets every single day, doing our missions, and was arming them with talking points and kind of word of mouth, sharing, all the investments we were making in the community. And kind of the Starship thing that we did was we built a radio station and hosted a radio show. And so essentially we were messaging through radio, through print, through billboard, out of home, through word of mouth, all the investments that were happening in the area. And we were bringing in like religious leaders and police chiefs and Army captains to partner and talk with the coalition leaders on all the investments that were happening in the area. And the call to action was always, if you need help, call this number. It was called the JCC number. But basically in the United States, we call it 911. And so we had no phone calls on a weekly basis. And all of a sudden, within 3 to 4 weeks, we started to get 5-6 phone calls per week of people reporting in, hey, you might want to look at the corner of X and Y. There's a big building there. Go look in the basement, and we'd find a bomb making facility. They'd tell us, there's a carcass on the side of the road. You might want to look inside that carcass. And we'd send the bomb team out there, and we'd find out there's a roadside bomb. We found out where attacks were being staged, and it basically gave us battlefield intelligence that allowed us to get a very small group of people of a town of 20,000 folks off the streets, and our weekly attacks dramatically declined after this. So for me, it was the first kind of foray into marketing. We even got into, believe it or not, consumer engagement, because the radio station got to a two-way conversation where people could call in live, like they do here in the United States, and speak directly to a coalition commander and kind of, translated through the air and get the truth. Many people wanted to help in writing the news articles for the newspaper. And so we were getting quite a bit of consumer engagement. And for me, first time into it, I was seeing the results. I was seeing and hearing the 911 station, which was on the same base as us, getting phone calls. And our teams would go out and be able to, go out there and prevent deaths, actually. So that's kind of how I got into marketing. And then from there, kind of transitioned over to craft foods, where I got a chance to work on a bunch of those iconic brands that you talked about.
That is marketing with stakes. If you can handle that, I feel like you can handle anything. So I want to get into the topic that I really want to pick your brain on. One of my favorite ideas in technology, which is where I work at Spotify, is the idea of owning your stack. Right? And in tech, that basically means if there's some piece of technology you're dependent on for functionality or customer service or making money, whatever, it's generally a good idea to have control of that. So you can add value, so you can not get boxed out, et cetera, et cetera. I think, and we chatted about this a little, John, I think something really similar has happened recently with consumers and brand experiences. And there's this whole direct-to-consumer explosion where brands are increasingly delivering these end-to-end experiences. How you discover something, how you learn about it, how you buy it, how you get it, and then ultimately even how you own it and connect it to other things. And I think people think of a couple of brands, Apple and companies like that right off the bat, but I think this is also a much larger trend, and I think you've been in the middle of it, and I'd love to get your take on it. So, have you been seeing this? What do you think is causing it? Where is this going?
Yes, without a doubt, I have been seeing it. And as I kind of shared a little bit of my background, kind of growing up in marketing at Kraft Foods, and eventually moving over to Whirlpool Corporation, very different path of purchase. I grew up in an environment where there was always this promise of the IMC, integrated marketing communications. Any brand team knows what I'm talking about. Agency team knows what I'm talking about. And, at the core of that was this idea of, putting the right message in front of the consumer at the right time and having the emotion, the connection to kind of, sway behavior, favorably toward, the business that you're the product or service you're selling. But, I believed in the concept, but the concept always fell short to me because it was heavily driven by the media plan. It was heavily driven by, the investment you were making across the flow charts, the media flow charts. And it didn't hit all aspects of the business. And I think today what we're seeing is a transition from IMC to more of this full end-to-end desired consumer experience. It was the original promise of IMC, but the difference is it's not a media flow chart. It's the actual alignment and coordination internally across cross functions to deliver on a strategic brand experience that's tied to a cluster of consumers in the market that have certain expectations. So yes, without a doubt, I'm seeing it, it's happening, and it's kind of cool to see what the promise of IMC really was supposed to be back in the day. In terms of the cause, there's a couple of things. From a kind of one level, consumer expectations around convenience. If you look at like where money's being spent, convenience is often around it. If it's convenient, consumers are interested in it for sure. The other one is this sense of expectations around entitlement. And so, simply put, people want to go through life with reduced friction and increased access. And so when you kind of think about that, the end-to-end experience where you're removing friction out of the shopping process, you're making the ease of the ownership of a product, whether it's got an issue or not, you're making that easy for the consumer. They're ultimately going to reward you. They're going to go towards the better experiences that are creating utility. On a different level, digital technologies, the explosion of omni-channel capabilities has allowed marketers to get into the gaps across the different journeys that the consumers are on. Brands, as another point, have more today than ever, have real meaning in the world. And when you have a brand that has meaning, that has a following, that people are willing to spend more money on for whatever value it's creating, it has to be protected. And so the protection leads to a desire to have more control. And the more control of the ecosystem, Apple, Amazon the more you're able to provide an experience to the consumer that is on their expectations. And then the last point that I think is causing this is results. I mean, if anyone was like really being honest with like all their marketing investments, there's parts of the marketing mix that you're just not sure if it's having the right impact on your business, and those days I think are over. I think that, CMOs and marketers, like if you're not tying your marketing investments to a positive impact on your business, like it's the resources just aren't going to stay there. So in the desire to drive more and more tangible results behind your investments, the D2C channel in particular it's clear as day. There's no doubt, like as you're investing in a certain, platform or a media investment or some type of experience you're creating for the consumer, and you can start to see the D2C channels pick up, it's in-house. You're seeing it directly. So I think a lot of that is what's driving it. Kind of an example for me that's pretty cool. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Blender's sunglasses, but I grew up in a world of Oakley's. You go to the store, you try them on. Yep. And now, for some reason, in my social feed, every time I feel the need to buy a pair of sunglasses, it's sitting right there, and they got my credit card, and I'm like, order. So somehow I'm buying sunglasses on a weekly basis right now. But that's and they show up on time. It's a great experience. They work, and it's just easy for me to maintain these sunglasses. So that's kind of a cool example. But and you asked where it's going. I think it's clear to me that this is going to become more and more of a reality for brands and businesses. And it's going to be, especially in the considered path to purchase. There's definitely a difference between, shopping for a 10,000 suite of, Whirlpool appliances than buying a can of beer. Yep. we've got way more opportunity to create experiences and engagement opportunities that our audience, finds a value. So I think it's the marketers that are casting vision across the entire business and then coordinating their process partners to deliver, whether it's pre-purchase or post-purchase, but ultimately delivering that brand promise at every different interaction.
I was going to ask about upsides and downsides of this, but I think you actually covered some of the upsides. I mean, elements like strategic control of things. It's just really, really important. I'm curious about the downsides, right? Because it's this becomes a trend. It becomes something that has real value to it, and in some spaces, it almost becomes not optional, right? What are some of the challenges, not necessarily of execution, which I want to cover in a minute, but of just this change in the market? What gets harder because this is now the new standard for engagement?
Yeah, I mean, there just real quick on, there are more. I mean, upsides like your acquisition costs are way cheaper when you can kind of, when people, have a great experience buying, a refrigerator from Whirlpool. Like the next time they go in and it's a great experience, they're probably going to buy the range from Whirlpool and the wall oven, and that's good. That lowers acquisition cost. The other thing that's kind of neat is, it's you got to kind of let your mind, think a little bigger for a second, but like new sources of revenue, like stretching brands outside their categories or bringing categories that aren't like that obvious to one category. Like if you're doing a great job in the ownership experience, that consumer is willing to cross sell. So, if you're, buying, if you've got Whirlpool washers and dryers and we start serving you like, our detergents, makes a lot of sense. The people that made the washer and dryer are the same people that can, auto replenish your detergents. And let's be honest, it's not that fun to go to the store and buy, a Tide detergent.
There's convenience again, right?
Show up when it needs to show up, so you start to get to like alternative sources of revenue. Stronger correlation between your marketing investments and the business results, which we all have that responsibility, as I was talking to earlier. But to your point on the downside, like if this was easy, everybody would be doing it. Everybody would be Apple, everybody would be Amazon. So, I think there are companies out there doing it. Nike is a great example. I think the airline is a good example. Southwest Airlines. I think online banking is a good example where if you're really kind of paying attention, the experience that you go about buying their product or their service, and then after you purchase it, the utility you get and the ease of information and knowledge transfer, like they're doing a pretty good job with that. And I'm happy to keep flying Southwest for that reason, or the same bank, because I've had a, really interesting example with purchasing life insurance recently and from USA. And that could be a complex process, but like all digitized, all done through the app, like, even the medical checkup and all that stuff. It was just all the friction was removed out of the process. It made it pretty easy. I'll be happy to go back there again. Right. But just in terms of the some other things, so yeah, your comment on downside. It takes time. It has to have vision. You have to have leadership that's convicted. You have to drive some sort of differentiation versus your competitive set. That's where your brand strategies have to be rock solid, connected to your consumer audience, and then cascaded across all the different touch points. It's a lot of coordinate, like even some of your process partners that you're used to working with, procurement, finance, like that group of folks have to like think differently about like the full experience, because historically it was maybe more in silos. Now you're kind of working across the different process partners. The other thing is technology. You got to invest. You have to have the stomach to invest in technology. You have to have the stomach to invest in different people that think differently, that maybe didn't grow up in your industry. And then, change. Anytime you're doing this, it's change, and change leadership, change management is not easy. So it's, like I said, if it was easy, everyone would be Amazon and Apple, but it's not. And it takes kind of a long vision over multiple years to get there.
Well, you talk about sort of change being forced on people. I mean, look at the last year, right? I mean, talk about putting a strategy to the test and trial by fire, right? I mean, has this been a good or a bad time to own that full brand experience? I know from our discussion that you are pretty far down this road, and it's not like this hits you mid-development, but what's it been like? I mean, and do you think that this very different world, which leans so heavily on convenience and experience just to serve consumer needs, is that going to take a step back to kind of where we were, or is this just the trend that was happening anyway, and this has just pushed us into the future?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the obvious answer is the brands that have been down this path, during these unfortunate times of COVID, have fared very, very well. I mean, if your brand was we've had some brands for certain reasons that are, distributed in traditional channels. If the government shuts those channels down, nobody's buying your product. Like, you have no access to your product, right? So I do think the brands that have been thinking more end to end, that have been thinking more about experience design across the full funnel of marketing, probably did very well. They did do very well through the COVID pandemic environment. I mean, it blows my mind when I walk down my neighborhood and the number of Amazon boxes I see stacked up. I mean, people have boxes stacked up like this, or Stitch Fix boxes. All these D2C channels, they're just stacked up and they're showing up on time, and they're easy to return if you need to return them. And again, going back to not just the distribution that got cut off in some ways, but also the delivery on convenience. People have busy lives. So I think that those brands are doing very, very well. There's no doubt about that. And COVID probably, if anything, has accelerated it. And I think that if brands or businesses haven't been down that path, they're really thinking about it right now, and probably doing things that are more setting them up for this type of success in the future. Interestingly, I do think that when you think about those distribution channels, the value space is, I think, always going to be there. There's always going to be like people kind of walking in those stores, and even in the luxury space, those high-end purchases, people want to go in and kind of go through that experience of buying that, that Bugatti or whatever. But the middle space is just going to keep expanding, and brands are kind of winning on this emergence of experience design, but technology and delivering your brand promises on consumer expectations at every single touch point, not just the upper funnel, but throughout the entire funnel.
So I think one of the great things about having you here, John, is that, you executed this and done this. And I think, everybody's had a PowerPoint slide put in front of them that says direct to consumer, control the experience. And that's very different than the logistics especially a large, complicated brand, of actually putting that into play. And we talked a little bit about some of the organizational challenges, different groups that now are that drive experience have to be on the same page. But I'm curious about any other sort of, including actual things that have happened to you, sort of the challenges of actually executing and getting this in place. What's been the hardest thing, and what, if anything, has actually taken longer than you've expected?
Yeah, I mean, we're, just to be clear, like we're kind of, in it in a lot of ways right now. So, the first thing I'd say is, like, there's no clear playbook. Like, what I mean? Like, it's more akin to building a brand new business, white space, kind of starting from scratch, than it is to like, hey, here's the playbook, just execute it. So I think, there are some proxies out there. I talked about a couple of them already, but I think there's a lot of challenges and mistakes that can be made along the process. And that's why I was talking about vision and leadership conviction from the beginning, because it takes time, and there's a lot of pieces that have to move around. So, first thing I'd say is, strategic planning. So you have to know why your brand exists in the world. You have to be able to think about your brand experiences across your consumer decision journey, if you will. And so experience design, consumer and shopper understanding, resource prioritization, capability audits, like you got to know where you want to go. You got to get that all kind of stood up. And, in my experiences, it's taken years to get that stuff all stood up. Years. I'm talking, 3 to 5 years to get all that stuff foundationally aligned. So that takes time. And then you start to think about the execution, and there's so many backing components when you think about your inventory, distribution, delivery, service, as you start to own parts of the experience that are new, to, 100-year-old company, even a 100-year-old company, those things can be new. So it takes a lot of internal alignment and getting folks heading in the right direction. But let's be honest, Amazon and Apple weren't, those experiences that they've created, they weren't built overnight. If you look in hindsight, they've been building over years. I can remember when Amazon was just the idea of getting on like the website to order something other than a book was odd. And now, like,
we do
bring my kids birthday gifts, like, you just jumped in the cart. He had saved a bunch of things he liked and, hit order and they're there the next day. So like that takes time to build all that infrastructure. But the other thing that I think, for older brands or non like Amazon, like startup type brands, I think, the importance of brand strength because of the challenges and the concerns around channel conflict. That's whether you're a CPG company or whether you're durables, that's no laughing matter by any means. So you really have to make sure that you have very strong brands that have pull, that consumers want, that they're looking for, they expect to be on that floor if you have those type of alternative channels. But you do have to always be thinking about the risk of being depositioned. We've all seen and probably read and heard about, Dollar Shave Club versus Gillette. It's a great example to look for. I mean, you always got to think, where's that Dollar Shave Club coming from, and how are you outpacing that type of innovation? So those are just some thoughts on how to get to, but like, we haven't mastered it by any means.
Right.
So we're very much in the build process.
So the one thing that's really interesting is you kind of somebody has to make the decision. I mean, and it's not a monolithic thing, but to do this and to say that this is the right move for us, including trends and everything else. So, how do you, two things. One, how do you ultimately know if this is the right strategy for a given brand? I think you had you talked about that middle space, right? Where I think a lot of this is growing. So how do you know if it's right for you? And then once it's implemented, I think sort of aside from just, soft qualitative things, like how do you know if this is working the way that it should? Are these traditional KPIs? Is this just business results? Or are there other things you would look at as you start to move this way to measure the effectiveness of what's happening?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, like, we are, in a lot of, like many companies in implementation right now. It's very, very, still very new. The one thing that I would kind of point out, though, to answer your question is it has a lot to do, I think, with the consumer decision journey and the depth of how your consumer decision journey works. As I alluded to a little bit earlier, buying a can of beer, and claiming an experience-based consumer engagement as the driver, is very different than buying a $10,000 suite of kitchen appliances. So the more considered path to purchase, the durables, cars, mattresses, small appliances, phones, even expensive clothes, very different than a box of mac and cheese, right? So I think that has a lot to do with your ability to really create experiences that are aligned with your brand, that the consumer appreciates, and causes them to recommend, hey, you're going to go buy, a kitchen of appliances, check out Whirlpool. It's an awesome experience, great product, ease of knowledge transfer, those type of things. So I think the actual shopping journey has a lot to do with that decision, and can you get there? I think there are some interesting brands though that are not as obvious. Like Gatorade is an example. I think Gatorade's a CPG like brand that on the surface doesn't seem like it might be able to drive the level of engagement that a consumer path to purchase can. But they, you look at some of the stuff they've recently done, they're starting to move, they've been moving beyond just a sports beverage for some time now, and becoming kind of this fuel-based company that's even bringing in technology to help you perform at a higher level. Mm-hmm. So you can get there. And I think that's one that's kind of heading in that direction, which is cool to observe. The other part of your question is KPIs. And we've done at Whirlpool, we've done a fantastic job with the way we monitor and understand the drivers within the consumer decision journey, and if they're having the impact on the business that we're expecting. But the approach to measuring across the end-to-end the consumer decision journey is shifting from non-linear to a more dynamic omni channel. So I think the KPIs are changing and the data measurement tools are getting more innovative, and you got to be careful not to have so much measurement you get bogged down to it, but you got to be able to centralize it in a way where you understand where your investments are going and are they having the right impact at the right kind of micro interaction that you're after. And if so, keep driving it. If not, make the adjustment. So I think the KPIs are going to continue to change, and we're even working through that a little bit to understand the more omni-channel consumer experience in what data sets you need to understand and focus on versus the ones that you don't really need to focus on.
So you've got, new data sets, new disciplines, all these different things involved. And, John, you build teams, you lead this kind of stuff. What kind of competencies do you need? And it doesn't have to be, all of them, but what are the key ones, I think, that you need to pull something like this off? Obviously, you have to do the usual things, make great products, make the right products. But what are you looking for lately that you maybe didn't think about in the past?
Yeah. I don't want anyone to think that I'm an expert here by any means. One of the things I love about marketing is you can have some experiences and you can share those experiences with people and help them, grow and develop as a marketer. But if any marketer is really being honest with you, we're all growing every single day because the world changes so fast and we have to be alert to that. And that's what I love about this field. So I'll just share a couple of things, but no expertise at this at all. And I even love the idea of even the role of the CMO is changing, like, the chief marketing officer. It's going to become more of a CXO, chief experience officer. Now that to me indicates where the competencies are heading. And so your ability to create convicted brand strategies grounded in data and cascaded across your business, that's part of the formula. I think the understanding of digital tools, specifically screens right now, and experience design and development is a huge competency, because a lot of these considered path to purchases are converging in and around, these things, right? And so that's a huge talent. Like, that's a very different talent, in a company that, was bending metal and great at thermodynamic and structural design. This is a completely new talent. So that's part of it. Creative problem solvers that are comfortable with technology platforms and technology leaders that are comfortable with creative thinking. Like that blend is very interesting. We've always talked about creative and media, but you're talking creative and technology, which I think is a very cool interaction that I'm seeing. Innovative thinkers are always going to be here that are willing to push beyond categories to create value across the ecosystem that I was talking about earlier. This is more growth-minded leadership, right? This stuff is a lot of these ideas, and it's definitely not in the kind of the more fixed mindset space. It's more in the growth mindset. So just kind of uncomfortable and ambiguous and dynamic environments, because things are changing. And like I said, there is no playbook. Like, so, right? You may be, the person that's expected to have all the answers, but, if you're honest, you're kind of learning and providing recommendations at the same time. So, the marketing community helps each other out, I think, quite a bit. But there's no unicorn. I don't think there's a one skill that you're after. It's really a blend of these digital oriented skill sets combined with the modernization of older skill, like more traditional skill sets. Imagine being able to talk to your finance partner, your corporate strategy partner, your sales partner, and helping them think in a way that's more in this end-to-end mindset. And they can get there, absolutely, but you got to kind of reframe things a little bit every once in a while. So I hope that answers your question, but I love the direction to more experienced thinking away from just pure marketing.
Well, it's interesting because it seems like it's almost, not to use a cliche, but it's a little bit of like a cultural shift, right? Where you're taking, it's not so much one skill you can plug in and all of a sudden you're doing this. If you're thinking about integrating your entire organization so that it solves a problem for a customer and you're really doing that, that's more communication between functions and this sort of holistic thinking. And that's, again, a little more cultural, I think, than just, I know how to do X.
That's correct. Yeah, totally agree with that.
So we got to get to questions in a minute because we've got a few popping in, but I'll close with something pretty open-ended for you. I mean, we've talked about change and adapting a lot, and we know that, there is no playbook and you don't have all the answers, but I would say if you could, maybe even talk to yourself a few years ago and say, hey, here's something that I've learned. If I'm a big brand and I'm preparing for this and I have a lot at stake, but maybe I'm not on the cutting edge of, consumer engagement. What would you tell them or tell that old version of yourself to really be ready for when you go through something like this?
Yeah, I'd say kind of three things I'd throw out there, and they're not tied really in any way. Just three thoughts. One of them is a distinct and ownable brand strategy that you are able to provide strategic guidance into your product development, your service development, distribution decisions, your pricing decisions, and then start to expand that into the experience across your shopping journey. I think that's where a lot of the struggle is, because I can tell you as I've gone through that, it takes time. It takes a lot of research, a lot of understanding the research, and a lot of courage for the teams to cast that vision. Your marketing teams are becoming strategic drivers of the business, not tactical executors of the business. So that's a huge shift as brand marketeers driving the business, as opposed to just pure execution. So I think there's a huge responsibility into owning that, and then casting those visions across your path to purchase. That's one I'd throw. I'd say if you're in the considered offering space, people are thinking a little bit more through the decision. I think this is going to be very tactical. I'm going to call it websites. You can call it screens, mobile screen, whatever it is. But website, mobile design, that space is critical. That's the front door to your house. That's the front door to your brand. That's where people are likely to go to get information and learn and draw conclusions. And so if it's a considered path to purchase, you've got to provide information and knowledge transfer, and remove the friction out of the process for the consumer, so that you're earning their trust in there. So I think there was a day, 10 years ago where we were thinking, build your website, get your products up there, and then you're done. It's alive. It's a beast that's constantly growing, and it's an integral part of your experience design. And then lastly, you mentioned to it earlier, organizing to take more control of your branded experience, to deliver on your there's an element of organization, internal organization, to get all, it's a huge team of folks that have to come together to deliver on that that branded experience. So organizational design is a big part of it.
So be ready for some change.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
Buckle up. That's good advice. All right. So I want to get to some of the questions that are in here. They're pretty varied. So get ready, John. Here's one that's a little tactical, but before COVID, what were some of the big sort of maybe traditional media marketing trends you were excited about that maybe are not as relevant anymore?
Before COVID,
I know it's a long time, right? It feels like it was 1,000 years ago.
Well, honestly, this is going to sound tactical, but I was leading the Gen Air brand and product teams. And pretty super premium niche target, highly affluent target that we're after. We were doing big storytelling around our brand and the products that we're offering, and we were able to get into certain zip codes, to get into movie theaters, and put some of our big storytellings on big display in front of our audience, in the theaters, to highly affluent zip codes and things like that. That's clearly something that's not of interest right now, unfortunately. But if I could kind of parlay on that response and say, hey, what are some things that you're excited about and you're still excited about? We're doing some really awesome work on the Gen Air team is doing this, but putting some of our digital screens out there in retail. So if you think about kind of synchronizing your end-to-end experience, and you're coming through your .com experiences, and you've obviously got data you can manage and track there and optimize and give greater experiences to your consumers. But there are also capabilities to put those out into the world as well, and great screen shopping experiences that, in an environment where maybe you have only allowed to show 20 of your products, you can have a screen right there that can show 200 of your products, right? And you get a decent sense for the feel of the product, the look, the design, the touch. And maybe it's not the exact one you want, but you can see the offering of through that screen. And that's another area of data measurement. Our screens are connected to the cloud, and we're able to measure data, provide information over the air if we need to. So that was something I was kind of excited to see, was that linkage between, this is, almost the opposite direction of D2C, but like the linkage between that manufacturing site down into, a retailer floor to aid a sales associate to provide information and to try to increase that shopping experience. That was a technology I was pretty excited about.
No, that's very cool to take that end-to-end thing and apply that to channels that you normally would think are not end-to-end. Well, we're going to make them kind of end-to-end.
That's right.
Yeah, that's very cool. You mentioned the sunglasses example, but are there any other brands that you as a consumer are engaging with differently in 2021?
Yeah, this one's probably people have mentioned this one before, but and this might even sound late to the game, but Peloton's been quite interesting to me from the beginning, from the purchase of it to the delivery at my home, to the first ride, to the the connection to the social media, to share your rides and almost like get to know the instructors, and then they're expanding into other categories. I think that's a really cool example of a brand that someone like a company like Whirlpool we can kind of look to and like draw a lot of insight and kind of inspiration from, and to challenge some of our thinking to create great experiences for our consumers. So that's been a neat one, which is a very expensive purchase that after having it in my home and being involved in it with it, like totally worth it. In fact, my kids ride on it too. It's really cool. Yeah,
we got one in the summer, and I remember thinking there was something making a noise, and in my head I thought, well, of course they'll fix it, because this brand experience everything's been together, right? This isn't just a traditional piece of equipment that maybe it's broken, I'll just tell them. I assume they'll make it work, because it's been a great brand experience. That's a good one. Let's see, another one. Let's see. This I don't know what the definition of flying off the shelves is for major kitchen appliances, but what if anything was started to fly off the shelf when the pandemic started? Did you see any surprising trends? I can see if this was a craft story, I can imagine there'd be tons of great examples, but what do you have?
Yeah, no, actually, you're not going to be surprised to hear this, but yeah, appliances are flying off the shelves. They absolutely are. I mean, people, for two reasons. And the one that's coming to mind is, KitchenAid stand mixers, the iconic stand mixer. That team's selling a lot of awesome different colored stand mixers right now, I can imagine. But cooking, families are cooking together a lot more. So, we've got a small appliance business, and those products are being used quite a bit right now. The other thing is people are, probably to no surprise, people are what I call position improvement, coming from the military, position improvement. So you're improving your offices, you're improving your kitchen, improving the area you're living in. And, that means, many people are upgrading their kitchens and they're putting new appliances in there. They're using them more, washers and dryers. So I think, fortunately for us, we're in an environment where, people are, they need our products, which puts a lot of pressure on us to make sure we're delivering to them, to our standards of quality and stuff. So it's a good time for this, for our industry. And the other thing I like about that is our products do go out into the world and they do help people. It's not like we sell, something that's bad for the world. Like, people being able to wash their clothes is a good thing. Clean their utensils is a good thing. Protect their food, cook for the families. That's all good. So it is nice to work in an industry that is in demand and also, does do good in the world.
And I can say, as a parent who is spending more time in the kitchen with my family, with our appliances, it's not a bad experience to spend a little more time, maybe making food, talking to the kids, doing that whole thing. So
that's right.
Well, with that, we're just about out of time. I'm trying to nail the time here exactly. But again, John, just want to thank you for being an amazing guest, really easy guy to work with and talk to. And in addition to just knowing and sharing a lot of interesting ideas. And of course, thanks again to Brand Innovators for hosting a great event, and to all of you for hanging out with us. So I'm going to hand it off to Emma.
Yeah, thank you both so much, John. We always love hearing your stories. You have such an interesting background. So thank you both for being here. And Nate, great job moderating. Hope to have you both back again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Emma.
Bye, John.
Good rest of your afternoon. Well, everyone who's still tuning in, we're about a little over halfway through our program on consumer engagement. So we're excited to move right into our next fireside chat. We'll be hearing from Brittany Connor, the brand marketing lead at Simple Tire, and moderating her session will be Liza Mandel, the VP of East Coast Sales at Influential. Hi, ladies. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, how are you?
Let me put my video on here. Hi, how are you?
Good. Well, I'll hand it off to you guys. Don't want to waste any time, but so excited to hear from you.
Thanks so much.
Hi,
hey,
Liza. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? It's good to see you again.
Good. I know. It's so nice to see you as well. It's been a wild week, I feel like. I'm ready for the weekend.
Same. I feel like there's been a lot going on too. It's like the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic. It
feels too real. It feels too real. Yeah, I know. We were talking today with a vendor and saying how we can't believe that this March is still crazy. We feel like, normally by March things kind of slow down, but it's just been insane, which is fun, challenging, but a lot of fun. So it's been
totally. It's been wild. But yeah, so I'll obviously kick it off. We want to thank Brand Innovators for having us. Thinking it's such a great opportunity to meet Brittany and also to get to know more about this really unique and innovative company, Simple Tires. So please bear with us. We're newbies at the live cast, both of us. So we get a pass on any tech issues or awkward pauses. That's, we get a pass on that.
Yeah, please.
But quick intro on my end. I started my media career on the agency side, and after 15 years there, made the leap over to the publisher platform side. So currently working on the partnerships team at Influential, which is the largest influencer marketing company in the space. We are powered by IBM Watson. We're the exclusive influencer partner. We have an extremely sophisticated technology and measurement, tracking the consumer journey and delivering real results for brands. So again, just a little bit of my background. And I think it would be awesome, Brittany, if you could share a little about your background, as I think, again, your moves and your creative path has been super interesting.
Liza, your elevator pitch was so good. I loved it.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm always doing that for Simple Tire, so I'm very impressed. So a little bit about me. I am the brand marketing lead here at Simple Tire, here in my living room at Simple Tire. And interestingly, started completely remote. So it's been a wild ride so far. I've been with the company about 8 months. Get rid of this dirty cup behind me. Zoom snafu, seriously, a year on. So I actually started my career in the PR agency world. I moved right to New York at the ripe old age of 21 and kind of hit the ground running and did that for about 8 years before I landed. I should say I was in New York and then I was in Sydney. So some international experience as well, and just really immersed in the consumer brand world. And that's really where I fell in love with all things comms, PR, and marketing. When I came back to the States, I had a brief stint in New York and quickly realized that New York was no longer for me anymore. And ended up in Philly working for Urban Outfitters in their food and beverage department, which is a small part of what they do, but it was really interesting and unique. We were a small but mighty team. We worked on a couple of really interesting brands. I eventually moved over to work on the Terrain brand, running all the marketing for their wedding venues and cafes. And that was pretty awesome. There was 5 cafes and 2 wedding venues all throughout the States, which was really wonderful. And then COVID hit. So that was interesting as well. You can imagine last March when I was, as the PR person, writing a lot of very sad notes to brides that we had to calmly tell, we don't know what's going on and neither do you. And we'll figure it out and do the best that we can. So come July, it was really interesting. I got a phone call from this wild brand called Simple Tire, who's really revolutionizing the way people approach tire replacement. And they said, we need brand marketing help. Are you in? And I said, yeah. So here I am. And it's pretty awesome.
I was going to say, I love it because I think it's such an interesting path too, like, going from urban
weddings to tires.
Weddings to tires. And I think,
what do you mean? They're so similar.
Totally. Yeah. Lots of alignment there. But I think as we spoke, obviously the other day too, coming from 2 non-tire, although I should say I'm not a non-tire person, but I think I mentioned this, my dad is a tire fanatic. So I randomly know some terms and things, but obviously coming from two non-tire people embarking on this conversation, would be great if you could tell us a little bit more about Simple Tire and also like what your role encompasses there. Because again, I think it's such a unique and innovative company. Would love to hear more.
It really is. And that's how they captured me. I mentioned to you when we spoke, my dad's been in the tire industry for 35 years. So when I gave him a call and I said, hey, this tire company called and wants me to work for them. And he said, why? And I said, I don't know. So it was really wild. I mean, Simple Tire is incredible what they've done since 2012. I mean, they've really been committed to, I like to say, democratizing tire replacement. I think, it's one of those tasks that's incredibly daunting for people who don't feel like they know enough about their cars or their tires. And it's knowledge that you maybe don't necessarily need to know. There's enough opportunity to kind of just take your car to the dealership and throw money at the problem. But really, Simple Tire is dedicated to empowering people to make the best decisions for themselves. So our website, you can actually go on and buy your tires completely online. You also have the option to make an installation appointment through us at a local service center. So it's really that end-to-end experience. But it's been interesting because our company was really founded by guys who grew up in the tire industry and didn't want the little guys to get left behind. So we're not a warehouse full of tires that we ship out to people all over the States. We actually get our supply from local suppliers and manufacturers all across the country. So we're supporting small businesses. We also support them obviously through the local service centers where we send people to get their installation appointments. And it's this all virtual inventory model that is really unique. And allows us to have a huge assortment, which can be a little intimidating to people who don't know about, what they need and what they want. But we also have a lot of tools on our website that help really navigate the experience for people. So when you go online, you can find your tires by size. You can type in just your car type, and we actually give you top recommendations. So if you want us to guide you, we will. If you don't, you can kind of say, no, I don't need your top recommendations. I just want to browse the selection. So it's really interesting. We're trying to make an experience that's valuable for tire people and non-tire people alike. And our CEO always says, that simple or tire replacement is never going to be a fun process. We know that it's not, nobody wants to go and spend a couple $100 on 4 bits of rubber that goes on your car. It's not a sexy purchase, but we're trying to make it kind of fun-ish, right? Like it can be a little bit more fun than people think. And then as far as my day-to-day role, I handle everything soup to nuts on the brand awareness side. So I manage social media and PR, in addition to, message strategy, running point on all of our big promotional sales, making sure our on-site messaging mirrors that, kind of overseeing some of the content on the website from a blog side. So I kind of have my fingers in a lot right now, which is really exciting. And yeah, I'm also managing our affiliate program, which we're really excited to get a little bit more deeply into. So anything brand awareness, I probably have something to do with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that just again, hearing when we chatted like about the company and knowing, like you said, buying tires is by no means, sexy or, sexy. But I also do though, to your point of, it's hard too. I think for some people, if they're not, that's not their thing. It's a difficult thing. And when I went on the website, like it does make it so, and again, this is I think obviously the evolvement of e-com and everything, but it just makes it much easier and simpler. And it's a 1, 2, 3. And yeah.
Very straightforward. And that's kind of our UX team, and I feel like we'll talk about it in a little bit. Our UX team is so wonderful at really understanding what our customer wants and needs. And we do a lot to ask, which I think, some brands don't, which I think is really interesting. And we're fairly young in this kind of evolution of our website and our team. So I feel like we're still in that kind of foundational findings mode of understanding, how can we make it better for everyone, which is challenging because there's a lot of levels of car maintenance knowledge out there, as we were talking about, which we have none.
Exactly. Yeah, it's also great to hear. I do love to, I mean, again, how Simple Tires works, and they are, tapping into those, those local businesses too, which I think leads us into this sort of next question too about COVID. And I think one big, hit, COVID obviously impacted the world, but definitely impacted on brands and marketing. It's been, impact there has been multifaceted, and especially obviously too with local businesses. But would love to hear just a bit more about how this past year has played a role for Simple Tire, because I think obviously given its, e-com focus, I think that would be really interesting to hear about this past year and what happened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're e-commerce, so it's no surprise to say come March of last year, we saw a huge increase and uptick in people, searching for tires online, finding us in those places where maybe they haven't been before. Really interesting, about a year before COVID started, the team here recognized the opportunity to broaden the awareness of our brand and just the viability of tire replacement online to a broader customer. So before, where it was kind of like, we were doing a lot of CPC work and finding our customers in like Google search and all of those types of things, the more paid aspect, we're rethinking, how do we develop a new user experience to make it better for, like I was saying before, people of all levels of car maintenance knowledge. How do we make it easy for people to do this and think about this more often, the same way that you've seen a lot of other DTC brands kind of pop up and revolutionize the way that you purchase mattresses or razors, things like that. So when COVID hit, we were already knee deep, probably even like elbow deep in the development of the new website. And I think it just really cemented the commitment to this new journey that Simple Tire is on, which is really awesome. And the interesting thing too, is we saw, kind of harping back on what I was saying before, like our all virtual inventory model, we actually were able to continue business as usual in areas where other tire replacement services or centers or warehouses couldn't, because they were being shut down due to COVID. So we were basically able to kind of continue, like I said, business as usual, where other businesses may have been hindered due to COVID in the early stages. And again, that growth just really cemented the viability of us, doing this new user experience, understanding our customer more, and then just, continuing to innovate. And not to mention too, our team grew 200% in 2020. So it's kind of bananas. Like COVID was a wild year in a lot of ways. Personally, I switched jobs. So that was kind of insane. Not something I thought I would be doing in the middle of a pandemic. But yeah, our team went from, pretty small to pretty substantial for where we were pretty quickly, which is cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's amazing. Again, obviously there are so many negatives from COVID, but it is really nice to also hear about some of these success stories coming out of COVID, whether it's people like, these startups that are creating creating these new ideas, or companies pivoting on what's happening. But again, like you said, like your team growing similar to ours, our team has blown up, and it's nice to just, I think, to focus on some of those positives and those success stories during the past year, which has been rough, but it's great. It's great to hear.
Try to keep it light, right? We'll try to find the silver linings where we can take them.
Exactly. I feel like that's the thing, is that, they're totally, I always love to hear those stories, or, again, hear about like the COVID babies or the COVID, like whatever it may be. It's always nice to hear those stories. So.
Honestly, all the little weddings, they were so lovely. All the elopements. I know that like people didn't get their big, huge days, but so many people I've talked to that kind of pivoted to the smaller situations just had a wonderful time. So, I've still got weddings on the brain, clearly. 3 years of working in the industry is hard to forget.
No, of course. My best friend had the same thing. She had to pivot and she got married on a beach with just her family. People, again, it's those happy moments too. They still exist, and they're good to see.
Just gotta find them.
Exactly. But knowing that obviously this is the panel, obviously consumer engagement, I think it'd be great to talk a little bit more about how important understanding your consumers is, and the research, and really that consumer archetype, because I think it's, again, back to our conversation and sort of the beginning of this is that not everyone is a tire person, and there are obviously different types. So would love a little bit more insight into your that consumer archetype and understanding of consumers.
Yeah, so this is something that Simple Tire really realized was important as they were developing the new user experience. So before my time, probably 2 years ago, they went through some pretty extensive brand research where they really uncovered who they thought the archetypes were. So we now have a couple, I think we have 6. We kind of talk about Kyle, Ian, Patty, they all have names. And it's really interesting because now we utilize those to help us really identify opportunities for growth and innovations. And also, what external partnerships make sense, knowing that we want to reach a Patty who maybe is a Costco shopper versus an Ian who probably takes his car to the dealership. So it's really interesting trying to understand who your customer is and who you want to acquire, and then trying to shape, like Kyle is who we already have, the tire guy. He already found us. He's already looking for tires. He knows we exist. He probably just wants the cheapest price. So it's, how do we really leverage what we do for all of these archetypes? I think, we also understand the motivators and the sentiments that these people have. And again, that's how we really shape our user experience and the different tech that we roll out. So actually are still in the midst of a lot of consumer branding research, which has been really awesome to be part of. And my connection is unstable. So if I start cutting out, I'm really sorry. All right, I think I'm back. So we've been doing, like I said, extensive brand research right now. We're midway through, which has been really exciting. I think I mentioned to you at, PR agency world, you're kind of given the cake's fully baked by the time you get it. I'm kind of in the ingredient mode right now, which has been really unique after nearly 10 years of this, getting to experience a new side of things. And it's been awesome. And the hope really is that this consumer research is digging deeper into beyond just who our archetypes are. Who are we to them? Who can we appeal to and why? What's the white space we fill in the market? We're not the only tire e-retailer on the market. We know that, but where do we fit? What's our unique selling propositions? What's our value propositions? All of these things. And even beyond just doing the consumer research that we're doing at a higher level, day to day, our UX team is constantly doing consumer research, which is awesome. We're user testing consistently when it comes to new tech that we're launching. We're always asking our customers what they think. We're finding people who have never even shopped online for tires to ask them what they think about new tech. It's really cool. It's really interesting to see how you can leverage consumer research to really be cross-functional. It goes beyond, UX and marketing kind of go hand in hand, but a lot of the research that we're doing right now, for example, we're doing some install research, and we interviewed 32 service center workers to understand how do we appeal to them from a B2B standpoint. How do we send you more customers? What's valuable to you? How can we be a better partner? And so that's been really exciting. And again, just like shows that cross-functional usage of research results and how you can leverage those insights to just make your business better, not beyond just marketing, just holistically.
Totally. I was going to say, honestly, those all come together. And I think it leads actually perfectly kind of into this next question. And I think that this is definitely a big one, talking about the consumer journey, especially when it comes to buying tires, obviously. I think that we talked about, this Simple Tires kind of came around and disrupted the tire category, which is awesome and great. And that's, I think, what we're seeing with a lot of these new successful companies, and they've really changed the whole tire buying process. So would love a little bit more insight onto, again, your consumer journey and how it's changed the whole process when coming to buying tires.
Oh, tires. I know, those magical things. So, I think it's pretty obvious to most people that the traditional way that you would go get tires is, that you need new ones, and you go to your local service center or you go to your dealership and they say, here are the tires we have, pick one. And so you don't really have a lot of control. Once you realize you have the tires, you're like, okay, well, I guess I just need to relinquish this process and kind of leave it to God kind of in some ways.
Right. Someone put some
Yeah,
on
like, and I think, the interesting thing is, like I said, it causes anxiety to people. It's like it's a daunting task. We always say it's the daunting task of tire replacement. It is daunting. It feels overwhelming. You don't know where to start. So you do end up just going to a shop and saying like, yeah, whatever, just do whatever you need to do to get me back on the road, which feels kind of unfortunate. You should be more of a master of your own destiny when you're making such a high value purchase. And like I mentioned to you before, our founders grew up in the tire industry. So beyond just creating a better way of buying tires, for the consumer, they also wanted to make sure that as e-commerce blossomed, that the little guys weren't getting left behind. So how could they create a company that not only made the consumer happier and have a better experience, but how could they also help the little guys kind of come along for the ride and be the e-commerce extension of a lot of the suppliers across the country that like maybe will never have a website, and that's okay for them. So I think, really that's what we were trying to do at the start. It's evolved slowly over time, really quickly over time. We've not even been around for 10 years now. And today, everything's online. I think I've mentioned to you, the web is the great equalizer. So now we're developing, like I've mentioned, a couple of times here, is like we're developing an experience that's really end to end. No longer do you have to feel like you have to go to your local guy and just kind of leave it to him. You can take control of the experience. We always say, put you back in the driver's seat, of course, all the car puns. And so you can feel empowered. That's really what we're about. How do we empower the person that needs to go get their tires quickly, efficiently, and hopefully cheaply? How do we empower the installers to have more customers coming through their doors? How do we empower the suppliers to make sure that they're staying afloat and providing their tires and maybe, shipping that tire that they've had in their warehouse for a long time over to somebody who needs it. So, I feel like that's really where we're trying to change the game. And we offer so many different capabilities on site to empower people. I mentioned the tire recommendations before. So based on data points, we recommend tires for you based on your location, your tire size, buyers like you. We also have tons of ratings and reviews because we know that that's really important to people as they're exploring which tire they want. So yeah, I feel like, just making that seamless online end-to-end experience to really take out the exhaustion of having to go and feel like you have no say in the matter. I feel like that's really how we're kind of challenging the traditional tire industry. That was only brick and mortar, really.
Right. Which is incredible. I mean, that's the, change. I think obviously, like you said, changing the game in this industry that is very old and antiquated and traditional. Very traditional is huge. But on that same token, I think looking forward, because again, it is such a it's such a traditional industry. What do you think, or what does innovation look like for the auto or auto care consumer, especially when it comes to Simple Tire? Because you guys have done so much already. It'd just be interesting to hear any thoughts on sort of innovation as we look to the future.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's always innovating how our experience works for people. How can we make it more simple? How can we make it easier? How can we make it quicker? How can we, do everything that the customer really wants us to do? I think more and more we're seeing that people want a one-stop shop when it comes to auto care. So is there an e-commerce solution where you can kind of do it all in one place? As you're installing or as you're booking an installation, can you also book a rotation or an oil change, things like that. So understanding, where does that fit into our mix as a tire company first and foremost is really interesting. We're really focusing, as I mentioned before, on the install side, making more relationships with local installers to really deliver on that promise of helping small businesses and also giving you, the opportunity to get your tires put on at a place near you that you love, hopefully. And again, it's always harnessing that consumer research to understand what innovations we can add. So we've got things like new on-site tech coming that I can't necessarily talk about, but might be on site right now if you want to check it out, where you can kind of start your tire shopping journey with a photo, which is really interesting. Just again, continuing to level the playing field for people of all levels of car maintenance knowledge. I think really that's where we're in the game of. And transparency. I think that's something that I learned a lot about when I first started at Simple Tire was there wasn't a lot of transparency in the industry before. So you might not have known, the full gamut of what you were getting from a tire or from a service center. And now really like we're putting it all out there for you so that you can make the best decision for you. And I think that's really what people want. They want to be able to, again, be the master of their own destiny when they're coming to purchase a big ticket item. I mean, look at, other brands that are now selling cars online. It's very similar. And how are they innovating? They're also now offering financing. So it's, how are we going to continue to kind of push things forward from a tire perspective? I guess only time will tell.
Yeah, no, for sure. I, now looking, sort of narrowing back down to this whole, marketing side of things and thinking marketing media. When you guys are looking, because again, I know that there, like you said, it's been around for a while, but there's been a massive change in your site and the way that you're marketing. What does for you and your team? What does success look like? When is it ROI, change perception, awareness? Again, given the path that Simple Tire has been on, be interesting to know what success looks like for you.
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting. When I joined Simple Tire, I mean, you hear so much about challenger brands today that are starting, in the COVID times and all of that. And they have a very strong sense of self. They have a very clearly defined brand. And they kind of start from that earned perspective. Simple Tire didn't start that way. It was a very, there wasn't a huge focus on brand awareness. It was more, how do we acquire the customer in an efficient way? And it was incredible and it worked and they grew exponentially. But as you realize, your growth, it can only go so fast when you don't have the owned, earned, paid kind of cycle running together. And I think when they were developing the new website, there was an obvious need for marketing to come into play, a brand marketing to come into play, to really understand, how do you acquire more customers beyond the ones that are already shopping for tires? Because you really can't unless you're getting out there and getting a little bit more just general brand awareness. So at the tail end of 2020, the marketing team grew a lot. Our CMO joined about a month after I joined. And so ever since then, it's really been about, how do we strategize? Again, that's where the consumer research comes in. That's been a big proponent of what we're doing right now. And it's education. So I think, as we develop this brand research and we get a little bit of that, North Star in front of us, I can see towards the tail end of this year, I think a lot of this more brand marketing is going to come into play. Right now, we're really setting the foundation. If you go to our social, you can tell, it's there. We're getting there. We're working with more influencers. We're kind of dipping our toe in a lot of pools this year. And I think as we continue to grow, we're going to keep changing the perception of tire replacement. Definitely you asked if that was a key. Of course, we want people to understand that it doesn't have to be a pain. It can be fairly painless realistically if you plan your time right and just tackle it with confidence, and hopefully we'll give you the confidence to do that. As an e-commerce business, we're obviously focused on analytics. So ROI is a huge part of, understanding what we're getting out of things, which is one of the reasons why we're really tackling affiliates this year. So we're diving into that channel kind of head first, whereas before we kind of had it, but didn't really strategize too much around it and things like that. So that's really exciting. And I'm hopeful at some point, we'll be doing some broader brand campaigns, which is what I'm really passionate about. So it's interesting. It's really cool now to see how all the channels are kind of working together. And I feel like we're only going to grow from there. So we're in this kind of incubation period. And I feel like this time next year, I'll probably have so much more fun stuff to tell you about. So maybe we'll have to reconvene and I can share case study. And because right now we're just like in full on planning strategy mode, which is super exciting for me because that's really why I joined. I want to be a thoughtful marketer. And I feel like that's really what we're trying to do.
That's awesome to hear. And yes, I really look forward to maybe a part 2 next year of all the success that you guys have had. And I love hearing you talking about affiliate and also influencer. And I know that we've touched on it, but yeah, I could see that being a huge part, hopefully in the future, given the results that hopefully they show this year. And then I think we have one more question. I know actually this is perfect timing, which we didn't even plan, but this just really couldn't have worked out better. But the one question that kind of broadly wanted to ask is one thing that you're looking forward to professionally and or professionally this year, given obviously everything that's happening now. And I do think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there is, and I just read that 1 out of 4 Americans is vaccinated. There's a lot going on, and I see the light, which is nice because I don't think we have been able to see the light in a while. So would love to hear what you're looking forward to professionally and personally, and then we can get to some Q&A.
So much. Travel. I'm looking forward to traveling. This time last year, I was gearing up for a trip to Australia that I never got to take to go visit my friends. So I'm hoping that we could reschedule that towards the tail end of this year. I'm looking forward to hugging my mom and dad and not feeling guilty about it afterwards because they can't help it. I'm looking forward to, so much from a personal level. I feel like I got a lot of irons in the fire with like side projects and interiors and things that I really want to do. But from a professional standpoint, I'm really looking forward to building our marketing team and building our center of excellence, really, and getting into working more with like-minded brands, working with our tire manufacturer partners. There's so much opportunity. There's so much white space because we've not done a ton in past in my channels. So I feel like just continuing to leverage that kind of stuff, understanding more how influencers can move the needle for us. I think that's really interesting because there's how many car influencers out there? There's so many, but how many influencers who just have cars that probably haven't thought about, utilizing a service like ours. So I think that's really cool and interesting. And again, like dipping my toe into new channels. Yeah, this affiliates I already touched on, that's something I'm managing, which I've never really done before, but there's such crossover with PR, launching new tech, all of that stuff. And hopefully a full scale branding campaign later this year. And that's like really my bread and butter. So I'm looking forward to tackling that and hopefully, becoming more of a household name. That's really what I want.
That's awesome. And yeah, I know you mentioned to me, you're like, I just want like the big, like the creative, fun, big stuff. Yeah. Big stuff, which is so, it's great to hear that. And obviously that is definitely, it sounds like to come, given the success that you guys have had so far. And I hear you on the traveling. I was supposed to be at the same time last year heading to Paris. So I feel you. Yeah.
Paris is the best.
I know. And it was for a birthday and my friend reached out and she was like, Paris 2022. I was like, I'm in. Tell me when.
I feel like my friends now, we were supposed to go to Nashville for my boyfriend's birthday last year. And they're like, all right, let's get it back on the books for the fall. It's time.
Yeah. I think everyone is itching to just get those because I think that the big unknown has been the problem and no one has been able to book things or reschedule anything. And now I feel like people are starting to feel that. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, it's true. The one positive has been, taking some road trips safely and gone on hiking trips locally and discovered Vermont and am now in love with Vermont. So like there have been some bright spots, I think, this year and we haven't killed each other yet in this house. So that's a good thing.
I know, exactly. I was gonna say, I've taken Spanish lessons. I feel like there are things that like came out of it that I'm like, well,
good for you. That's awesome.
Like we said, silver lining. Okay, let's get to a couple of these questions as they come in. Okay. A question. I saw you were named one of the best companies to work at. What aspects of your day-to-day do you see do you see this positive culture? That's awesome.
That's a great question. Thank you. And funnily, I was talking about this yesterday with my friend whose CEO doesn't believe that you can build a culture remotely. And I'm here to tell you that is false, because I joined completely remotely in July. And I've been to the office one time because I had to do a photo shoot, masked up, of course. And honestly, this place is great. It really is fun. The executives are wonderful and they're accessible, which I think is really unique. You know, we've grown exponentially, but I still could have a one-on-one with our CEO, our CTO, or our COO anytime because they're here and they're on the ground and they're doing their thing. I think from a culture perspective, I know, you know, our fun committee, which I'm on, we always try and do activations and things as far as, you know, trivia nights. And we have a trivia night coming up next week for St. Patrick's Day, which is company-wide, which is great. Every Monday morning, we have a stand-up with our CEO. Once a month, it's a little bit of a longer, like bigger meeting, but typically it's like a quick 15-minute, hey, hi, how are you? This is what's going on. Different team members are highlighted. We have team member of the month. We have innovator of the month. We now have a tuition reimbursement program that just came out. So they're always trying to think of new ways to keep things happy, light, and fun, which I really appreciate. And I've definitely worked at places that did not have a healthy culture where it was maybe just based around Friday happy hours. And this is definitely a lot different. And I just feel like the open door communication's wonderful. And I think most people that work at Simple Tire really enjoy, I mean, probably everyone really just enjoys it. It's a good place to work and the people are wonderful. My team is great. I love everyone, which is rare.
I was gonna say that's awesome, and also one makes things so much easier just when obviously given how many hours your day takes up. I mean, your job takes up, but also knowing that you did join during this whole, you know, during the pandemic. Like I think that that's a huge testament to the company because I think it, you know, a lot of people struggled, but knowing that they do all that from a culture perspective is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool, and like we have people all over. Obviously, being e-commerce, you know, we're based in Philly, so I could go to the office when we reopen, but we've got, you know, some of our service guys are in Indianapolis. We've got people in Ohio. We got people kind of dotted everywhere. Our CTO's in Utah and has always been based there. So it's really interesting. And I think, you know, obviously we've been able to function remotely and not even just function. We've really been thriving, which has been awesome.
That's awesome. Well, and to that point, so another question actually leads perfectly into that. Says you've seen tremendous growth this year. Do you feel like you're drinking from a hose? How do you manage day-to-day operations with such growth?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot going on, and we definitely need a little bit more headcount in our marketing team. I will admit that. It doesn't necessarily feel like we're drinking from a fire hose necessarily. I think the expectations aren't overblown, you know, it's kind of prioritizing and get to what you can get to. And that's what needs to be okay at this moment in time, knowing that, you know, we just need a little bit more headcount. But I mean, I think it's interesting, you know, when I always have one-on-ones I report directly into our CMO. We have one-on-ones weekly where we just kind of go over priorities and understand what can be left to the side and what needs to really be activated. And sometimes, you know, social needs to take a back seat because we've got a PR launch coming up and I'm only one person. So we're all busy. We're all stretched a little thin. I feel like that's just like what's going on right now. Like I said, I was expecting March to get a little slower. It doesn't seem to be. It's a kind of bit, but not really. But yeah, I think, you know, again, being at a good workplace where the expectations are they don't exceed the 8 hours in a day. Sometimes they do, but I think when you appreciate who you work for and with, it makes it a lot easier to kind of be like, okay, it's going to be a little busy for a while, but it'll get there. We'll get there. We're growing. We're building. It's a lot of foundational work that's happening right now. So I think it comes with the territory.
Yep. Yep, for sure. Yeah, no, I think that everyone wants, you know, the growth, obviously, that's similar with our companies, that you just kind of have to prioritize, you know, and if you have a good team in place, it really does help. I think that that's huge. So like you said, you love your team, and that's huge. And okay, one last question here. It said, this is a tactical question. What does your consumer demographic look like? I know we touched on this, but are there geographic disparities, gender? So a little bit more in the weeds there on your demographic, because obviously we spoke about this. There's a lot.
Yeah. So the core archetypes that we're really looking at, it's interesting. They're pretty much split male to female. I mean, we named them male because they were more male, some of them. But we do have a pretty even split. It's interesting the amount of car maintenance decisions that are made by the women in the household. And, you know, we take that into consideration as we're kind of developing things. Oh my gosh, what was the question? I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, not at all. That the demographic, are there geographic disparities?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously gender, but we know that, again, they're like, you have Ian and you have, what was the other one?
We have Patty.
I don't know.
Ian, Patty, Kyle. Yeah, there's a couple of different ones. Geographically, I mean, we have a bigger supply and installation presence in certain parts of the country, but I mean, we service nationally, so we really don't see necessarily a disparity. I mean, there's obviously, I would say, more cars per capita in like more rural suburban areas than there would be in like a New York City. So for us, like, doing big activations in New York probably wouldn't be as relevant for our brand as they might be for, you know, a different type of brand. But honestly, there's so many car owners.
Exactly.
And we're trying to kind of reach all of them. So I hate to say it, it's kind of like, you know, we know, I think for us, it's less about the person, it's more about the motivators and the barriers for them. So what motivates them to shop with you and what are the barriers? I think one thing I did wanted to bring up earlier that I didn't is understanding that, you know, right now we have buyers, but we want customers. So that's really how we're thinking about this, is like, how do we turn a tire buyer into a customer of Simple Tire so that they consistently come back to us time and time again, instead of, you know, doing maybe what they always did or going to our competitors. So that's really the emphasis. And I think that's important to note really in the archetype conversation.
That's the perfect way to end too. I think we are just a minute away, but this is awesome. I know. Thank you.
Liza, we did it.
We
First
did
one.
it.
Good job. High five.
High five. No glitches. No issues. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And it's great to chat with you.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say there was no way of knowing that was your first session. So you guys both did a great job. So hats off, and we hope to have you back again for sure. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Rest of your afternoon. Well, we are ready to head into our final session of the day. We're so excited to have Moika Kamachi, the Director of Platforms and Tech Team at the National Research Group, and Melissa O'Farrell, the Senior Director of Consumer Insights at Zynga, here to share a keynote presentation with us. Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Looks like we got both of you guys here. You got your brand innovators backgrounds. We'd love to see it. So looking forward to your presentation. So I'll hand it over to you both.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Mo, confirming you can see my screen, okay? I'm always nervous. Okay, great. All right, well, hi everyone. I'm excited to be here alongside Mo from NRG, who was instrumental in helping us define what we call the Zynga Advantage. So in my role at Zynga, I focus primarily on product and marketing strategy for live games and games in development. However, in conversations with Gabrielle Heyman and Anna Baxter from the ad sales team, we realized the need to better understand how our players feel about ads, especially given all of the growth across the portfolio. So we partnered with Mo from NRG on a quantitative study that took course over 3 waves in 2020. The first wave was in January and February. The second was in April, and the third was in October. Today, we're going to focus on the highlights from the most recent wave in October. I'm going to talk about our players as media and entertainment consumers, and then turn it over to Mo to elaborate on their relationship with advertising. A few notes about sample. We surveyed what we call active mobile gamers, and these are folks who play games, at least an hour a week on a weekly basis. And then we also talked to folks who we sort of classify as non-mobile gamers, and these are folks who haven't played games within the past week. Everybody that we spoke to was within the ages of 13 to 64, and for the purposes of today, we're going to focus on Zynga mobile gamers, who are also referred to as ZMGs in the deck, in case that looks a little funny to you, and what makes them such a high quality audience for advertising. So we'll get into more detail throughout the presentation, but at a high level, they are, and I'll let it build. They are more engaged gamers, heavy consumers of media and entertainment, more positive about ad experiences, and more likely to take action after ad exposure. It's crazy kind of when I think about how much the gaming industry has evolved since my early days at LucasArts. I got my start in 2004 on the PC console side of the business, and remember all the bad stereotypes about gamers being guys in hoodies, playing all day in their basements. And at that time, my family really didn't understand my job. They kind of had no idea what I was doing for a living. They were excited that I was working on Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but they were kind of like, PS what? Xbox, huh? Like they just didn't get it. And then all of a sudden, mobile gaming came about, and mobile really changed everything. So by removing the friction around hardware and software, it truly opened up gaming to the mass market. So most people have a smartphone or a tablet, and the majority of the games are free. So really anyone can play, including my mom, who now qualifies as a gamer, as does my sister, my brother-in-law, and my 11-year-old daughter, because they all play Words with Friends 2 together every week. And then my husband and my 9-year-old son both love cars. So CSR2 is a little bit more in their wheelhouse, whereas Mo from NRG is all about Pokemon Go, Clash Royale, and Agrisuko, hopefully I pronounced that right, Mo, which is a Sanrio puzzle game. So why does every generation play mobile games? Sure, there's an element of escape and relaxation and fantasy fulfillment, but at the end of the day, people play mobile games because it's accessible and flexible entertainment that makes them feel good about themselves. So good game design allows for autonomy and competence, meaning that as a player, the choices I make in the game determine how successful I am. And who doesn't like completing a new or a hard challenge or moving up to the next level? It's human nature to seek mastery and progression, which is why we see it in so many other areas of life, like sports and education and career development, and which is why it feels so good in games. So having established that mobile games are mass market entertainment that makes people feel good about themselves, it's no surprise that 3 in 4 Zynga mobile gamers say games are their happy place and spark joy. And that Zynga mobile gamers spend more time playing games than other activities on their smartphone devices. They also download more games, so 6.3 new games in the past 6 months compared to 4.6 among what we call average mobile gamers. So those are folks who aren't currently playing a Zynga title. There are also more voracious media and entertainment consumers. So you can see, right, Zynga mobile gamers, they love games, but they're also highly engaged in other types of apps like music, social media, and most importantly, shopping. And they were more likely to see movies in the theater back when that was an option, and hopefully it will become one again very soon. They also tune into multiple streaming services and tend to have more paid subscriptions. They regularly play games on console, which I don't think that's a big surprise either. And while they're a highly engaged audience, with not only with content, but also with ads. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mo to elaborate.
Thanks, Melissa. So let's hope tech is on our side.
Fingers crossed.
Okay. So can you see?
I can see. Yep. And you're on the right slide.
Amazing. So thanks, Melissa. So before I take you through kind of the ad experiences that Zynga mobile gamers had and the sentiments that they have, just a quick spiel about myself. My name is Moeka Komachi, and I go by Mo. I'm one of the directors of the platforms and technology team at NRG, and had the honor of partnering with Melissa and her team to do this study. And in terms of my day-to-day, I'm a gamer in and out of work. So, just my job feels like a really good marriage between a lot of the stuff that I'm passionate about, right? So gaming, finding answers to a lot of tough questions, and then kind of weaving the pieces together to provide actionable insights to clients like Melissa. So coming back to what's on the slide here and the presentation. So what we learned from the data is that Zynga mobile gamers exhibit what we're calling the 3 I's. And I'm going to go through each I in greater detail as the presentation progresses. But just as an overview, you see them right here. And the first I being that they're involved, right? Like as Melissa kind of talked us through earlier, they're really already engaging in and enjoying the activities that really expose them to ad experiences, be that movies, watching TVs, and things like that. So again, that makes them a prime target for different ad experiences. And the second I is that they're impacted by ads, right? So what that means is, once they're exposed to an ad, they have more call to action. So they're more likely to look up more information, or even to an extent buy the purchase that they're being advertised to. So we'll learn more about that again in the later slides. And then the last I is that they're interested, right? So on top of, being more involved and kind of being more influenced by ads, they're also interested and show an affinity and favorability towards the different ad experiences that we expose them to. So the first I, right? So let's get deep into what the first I involved entails. So they're more tuned into content, making them really a reachable audience across different media experiences. So in the questionnaire, we asked them about kind of the leisurely activities that people are engaging in and enjoying. And you'll see that we're showing the top 6 activities here. And we see watching TV, playing video games, cooking, exercise, reading books, shopping for fun. So all these activities, digital or otherwise, are opportunities for ads to kind of make a presence in front of Zynga mobile gamers. So you'll see a lot of numbers here, but really what we're focusing on is the bolded ones. So the 78s, the 69, 56. Those are the scores Zynga mobile gamers had. And we're comparing that against average gamers, which again, as a reminder, are the non-Zynga mobile gamers. And then what's also really compelling here to call out are the kind of the smallest font we have there, which are our non-mobile gamers. So at a whole, right, what does this all mean? We're seeing that mobile gamers, again, Zynga or otherwise, are really over-indexing on these key metrics, with this one being the leisurely activities that they're engaging in. And then moving on to our second I, they're impacted by ads, or they're influenced by them, right? So the ads are much more likely to make an imprint on memory, and you'll see that we have a lot of info on here, so I'll take you through each. So let's focus on what's on the left here, right? So we asked them about the mobile gaming ad experiences. So to be clear, we're talking about the ads that people are exposed to while playing mobile games. And we learned that 52% of Zynga mobile gamers say that these ads, again, on mobile games, are memorable, compared to just 30% of what we're calling average gamers. And on top of that, they display a lot more call to action, right? So 2 in 5 Zynga mobile gamers looked for more information upon seeing that ad. And more remarkably, you'll see that nearly a third actually went out and purchased that product that was being advertised. And then moving on to what's on the second half of the slide, we're now talking about different TV ad experiences, right? So we see that more than 3 in 4 Zynga mobile gamers said that ads that they see on TV are memorable. And then zooming in on, again, the call to action piece of it. So 1 in 2 Zynga mobile gamers actually look for more information. And then about a quarter of Zynga mobile gamers purchased that product that was advertised. And then moving on to our third last pillar, or the I, is that they're interested, right? So this is probably not surprising by this point. You know, Melissa took us through that journey. I've talked about it a bit already, but really what we're learning is that they over-index on a lot of KPIs pertaining to kind of the affinity and favorability towards these different ad mediums, right? So, you know, whether it's TV ads or social media ads that are on desktop, laptop, mobile devices, even online video ads across these different platforms and TV, and mobile app ads, mobile gaming ads, banner ads. Towards all of these different ad mediums, Zynga mobile gamers were twice as likely to be paying attention to them. And also they were twice as favorable towards these different experiences. And I mean, good news for advertisers and good news all around is that Zynga mobile gamers know what they want from in-game ad experiences, and they weren't shy to tell us what they wanted, right? So let's go through specifically what they're looking for in mobile gaming ads. So to be clear, in the questionnaire, we had a designated section in which we asked pre-pointed questions about the types of ads they wanted to see and what they wanted to get in return. So we really learned that Zynga mobile gamers are willing to trade attention for rewards. So over 2/3 like getting in-game rewards. So these could be in the forms of coins or maybe extra lives. But the fact that they're being rewarded for it really adds this like interesting layer to this story. And when we asked a forced choice question in which we asked about the format of the ads that they wanted to see, you'll see that the majority, so 42%, really don't have a preference between the types of in-ad experiences that they want to see. But when we hone in on what's in the red bars here, something interesting really popped to us, right? So there's a slight skew for interactive in-game video ads. And when we say interactive, we're talking about playables, right? So you see that, you know, we're probably all familiar with any form of ads that come in through gameplay. And these are the ads where they kind of let you play and get a feel for the gameplay versus the non-interactive or the non-playable ads where it's 26% there are kind of the more passive experiences where it's like the video plays at you, you're kind of taking a seat back. And yeah, again, there's a slight skew for the former with 32% saying they prefer the interactive types. And then lastly, we also asked about the types of products and services that they want to see advertised across different mediums, right? And when we focus again on the top performers, so the first row, you'll see that a lot of the things that they over-index on are the things that we had talked about in our 3 I's, right? Especially the first one, that they're more involved. And like Melissa had said, you know, they're already engaged in these different types of mediums, products and services. So it makes intuitive sense. And it's also, again, good news that, you know, the products that they're interested in seeing advertised are in line with that. So, you know, from movies to TV shows, tech devices, mobile games, food, beverage, mobile apps, all the way down to what we see in the third row, including things like subscription services as well. So now that we've talked at you all, we're excited to receive any questions, comments. Let's see. Melissa, I have a question for you.
Yes, Mo.
Which insight was kind of most surprising to you?
I think I would say like how impacted our players are by ads and how likely they are to actually to take an action after exposure. And honestly, like going into this study, I think we were pretty confident about what we would see, kind of from a gaming perspective, but I really wasn't sure kind of what the results would look like on the ad side of things, because we'd never really dug this deep before.
Yeah, and I think also it was cool and also surprising to me too in kind of a positive way that, like you said in our methodology section, we did this 3 times, and all 3 times at different periods, like very critically different periods, right? We have pre-COVID and during COVID, and yet the findings were very, very consistent. If anything, I don't think there was a single change in behavior, which is really interesting to kind of keep an eye on as hopefully life goes back to normal.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, the thing about our industry is that, people love gaming, right? And they play games because it makes them feel good about themselves, and it's a hobby. And for some people, it's a lifestyle, right? And it's a ritual, and it's something that you do every day that brings you maybe a little bit of comfort, a little bit of joy. And one of the great, like, it's kind of unfortunate, but it's also like one of the great aspects about mobile specifically is that, pre-COVID, people loved games, right? And then during COVID, it's also been like an outlet for people in a way that maybe it wasn't necessarily before, because people are finding new ways to kind of connect and play together, because so much, right, of your social interactions are digital, kind of at this point in time. And so it's unfortunate that we're, kind of in this pandemic, and that we've been in this pandemic for so long, but it does make me really proud to be a part of an industry that have kind of helped people feel better, right? A little bit better, kind of along the way, right?
Yeah, and it also seamlessly just fits into people's lives even more so now, right? Like across focus groups, I like to ask just how people are feeling in their times as a warm-up activity before we even get into the mobile gaming concepts and things like that. And everyone without fail would be like, oh, like, I started this puzzle game, or like, oh, I started taking care of these like kitties online and things like that. And a lot of them also are pretty unapologetic about when they're playing too, because it's like, oh, like during Zoom, no one's going to know if I'm playing it on my little desk here. Oh, like during class, the professor doesn't like make us put our screen up. So I don't have my camera on. I'm just playing a casual, or it's with friends here, Candy Crush here and things like that. So it's interesting.
All that to say is that we don't want to take people away from their job responsibilities and their education, but
it's a little escape.
Yeah, it's really funny too, because my kids have been in Zoom school for the whole year, and the teachers have what they call gamer face, so they can tell like when the kids are kind of second screening, and they'll be like, I think I see some gamer face happening here.
That's so funny. I used to be a teacher, and I used to call kids out on like texting faces, so they have their phone like under the desk, and they're like curiously looking down. It's like, I think that's texting face. So I guess we've evolved since, and now gaming.
Gamer face now too.
Well, thank you both so much. This was such a great presentation to end on. I so appreciate you guys sharing your insights and finding with our Brand Innovators community today.
Well, thank you so much for having us, Emily. I think, like, for me, this was my first one, so I'm over the hump.
Oh my gosh! Now you're a pro. You'll be ready to do anything in the future. You couldn't even tell. We had the session before you. It was both of their first times as well. Which sometimes people are more excited when they haven't done it before. So glad that it was a good first experience for you.
Yes, very cool. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hope to have you both again soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Well, that is a wrap for today's live cast on consumer engagement. Thank you so much to Melissa and Moika for that amazing presentation, as well as all of our speakers throughout today's event. Our Brand Innovators team is gearing up for our biggest tentpole ever. Our Trend Watch Summit is going to run next week from Tuesday to Friday. These 4 days are going to be packed out with so many incredible marketing leaders. So be sure to join in. Tuesday, we'll be kicking off at 11:20 Eastern time. We'll be hearing from speakers from Pizza Hut, Walmart, Kimberly-Clark, PepsiCo, Ruby Tuesdays, and many, many more. So you won't want to miss it. But